Heartbroken widower finds a fragile orphan. Her smile becomes his second chance. Dear friend, before we begin, you're welcome to subscribe and let these heartfelt stories continue walking alongside you. A restless wind whispered through the fragile window panes of the Whitaker family manor, its breath so cold and tentative that it set the curtains trembling like ghostly dancers. Each draft carried with it a mournful sigh, as though the house itself remembered happier days and longed for their return. The boards beneath the breeze creaked softly, an agonizing chorus of sorrow that matched the hollow ache in John Whitaker's heart. John's footsteps echoed along the corridor, a solitary figure draped in a faded charcoal wool coat that had once belonged to his beloved Emily. The walls were lined with portraits whose colors had long since blurred, images of children laughing in sunlit gardens, of Emily smiling by a piano, of Samuel toddling in his grandmother's arms. Now each painted face seemed to stare at him with accusing vacancy. He paused before one oval frame. Emily's hazel eyes sparkled under the flicker of memory. He traced the outline of her lips in the dusty glass, as if seeking to capture the warmth that had slipped from his life 5 months ago. In the quiet gloom, John felt a sudden surge of recollection. He remembered how Emily would cradle his face in her hands, her thumb brushing gently over the worry lines etched by countless trials. Under the mellow glow of their bedside lamp, she would smile and say, "You are braver than you believe." Tonight, that memory was a knife twisting in his chest. The grand rocking chair in the parlor stood empty, its dark oak arms and curved runners stained by decades of gentle motion. It swayed ever so slightly, as though propelled by some unseen hand, as though replaying the cadence of Emily's laughter on a spring morning. The sight made his throat constrict. He half expected to see her shawl draped over the back, still warm with her presence. A pungent scent of aged wood and damp earth mingled in the air, an odor that transported him back to his childhood when he and Emily would run barefoot through the halls during summer storms. It was the same musty perfume that rose from the cellar barrels beneath the floors, marking every corner of the estate with a sense of history and home. In a sudden flashback, the manor bloomed with life once more. 9-year-old Samuel, with his mischievous grin and unruly waves of light brown hair, had clambered onto John's lap after breakfast to show him a crayon sketch. The boy's wide green eyes brimmed with compassion as he pointed to the figure in his drawing, a slender outline of a woman bending to tend roses in the garden, her profile unmistakably Emily's. "Grandpa," Samuel had whispered, "she's here in my picture." John remembered how that simple gesture had filled him with both hope and heartbreak. Later that afternoon, Samuel had insisted they prepare their secret remedy against gloom, a steaming mug of cocoa sprinkled with cinnamon. In the cramped warmth of a little kitchen, the crackle of the ancient stove and the aroma of hot chocolate were a balm to John's frayed nerves. Samuel had poured the milk and cocoa powder with earnest concentration, stamping his small feet to balance on the chair. "One more scoop for courage," he declared, his voice quivering with earnestness. Together they sipped in silence, hands wrapped around the cup, drawing strength from a ritual passed down through generations. Now, in the present hush, John stood before the narrow stairs leading to the attic. The carpet runner was moth-eaten, and each step groaned beneath his weight. At the top, he spotted a battered chest half hidden beneath a dusty sheet. Its iron latch was warped and rusted, sealed with a length of faded yellow tape, as though someone had tried to guard its contents from the ravages of time, and perhaps from prying hearts. With trembling fingers, John peeled back the tape. The box fell open with a plaintive creak, revealing a glimpse of Emily's life's work, a leather-bound notebook, the pages yellowed and brittle, filled with her precise sketches of mechanical marvels, intricate gears, humming coils, and delicate pistons. The edges of the pages curled like autumn leaves, each diagram a testament to her genius, her curiosity, her insistence that nothing was beyond possibility. He brushed his hand against the old armchair propped nearby, The worn grain of its leather upholstery was rough beneath his fingertips, yet it still carried the faint imprint of Emily's frame, as if her shape had been molded into the seat. The sensation sent a shiver of bittersweet longing through him. A soft knock at the attic door startled him. He turned to find Rosa, the kindly old neighbor who had known Emily since they were children playing hide and seek in hidden alcoves of the manor. Rosa's hair was a cloud of silver, her lined face alight with gentle authority. She held a bundle of brittle envelopes tied with a faded ribbon. "John," she said, voice quavering like the autumn leaves beyond the window, "these are the letters she never sent, exchanged with someone who called himself a friend of tomorrow." She pressed the stack into his hands. John's breath caught. He untied the ribbon, allowing the envelopes to spill like pale ghosts across his lap. The ink was smudged in places, the penmanship elegant yet urgent. He felt the old, familiar ache of anticipation mixed with dread. Who was this mysterious correspondent? What secrets might these letters hold? A sudden memory came flooding back. Emily in the conservatory, crouched beside Samuel as he dug a hole for new rose bushes, her hands gentle on his young shoulders. "Every bloom is a promise," she had told him. Samuel had completed the picture in his mind then, painting hope in petals of crimson and gold. John's fingers hovered over the unopened notebook at his side, uncertain. The weight of that box, of those letters, pressed upon him a question he was not sure he could answer. The future, once brimming with Emily's laughter, now felt like a narrow corridor of doubt. Could he unlock her dreams, or would he be swallowed by his sorrow? He looked up at Rosa, who offered him a steadying smile. "Courage," she murmured, "is not the absence of fear. It is facing what we treasure most, even when our hands shake." Down below, he could almost hear Samuel's quiet breathing. The boy stood just outside the attic stairs, clutching a faded doll that had belonged to Emily, her button eyes reflecting lamplight from the hall. Samuel watched his grandfather with solemn understanding, as though he sensed this moment's gravity. John closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, the scent of old paper and oiled metal filling his lungs. When he opened them again, his resolve had hardened into a fragile sort of hope. He stepped forward, pulling the lid of the chest fully open. His hands, despite their tremor, reached in and lifted Emily's notebook free from its resting place. As the lid fell shut behind him with a soft thud, the attic lights flickered and the wind sighed through the cracks, carrying with it a single whispered truth. The legacy of love is never buried, and what we treasure most can, if we dare, be set free to bloom once more. John Whitaker stood in the dim glow of the library lamp, his heart fluttering as though it had recognized an old friend. In his hand was a brittle slip of paper, Emily's handwriting, unmistakable, looping and tremulous, dated exactly 20 years ago. He smoothed the page against his palm, marveling at how the ink had faded to a warm sepia, yet every curve of her script still spoke with urgent purpose. He cleared his throat and began reading aloud, each word a fragile echo of a time when hope was new. "My dearest John," the note began, "I've hidden something that will change everything you know about our past and our future. Seek the oak chest in the East Wing's attic, beneath the floorboard marked by a single rose carved in wood." John's voice cracked as he paused, imagining Emily, pen in hand, daring him to believe in her secret vision. He traced the ragged edges of the paper, dark brown coffee stains marring the margins, corners meticulously folded and refolded, and faint smudges from a tear he must have bravely resisted. The parchment was thin beneath his fingers. He felt the slight undulation where dampness had settled years ago. In that tactile moment, he was transported to the cramped kitchen table where Emily had pored over blueprints and coffee cups, her eyes bright with determination. A gentle cough at the doorway announced Clara's entrance. Clara Whitaker, herself a retired schoolteacher and Samuel's beloved mentor, approached with the deliberate grace of someone who had spent decades coaxing meaning out of words. Her wire-rimmed glasses perched on a slender nose, and her gentle gray hair was pulled into a loose chignon. In her arms, she carried a loaf of freshly baked bread, still warm, its crust crackling softly in an inviting invitation. "Bread," Clara said, laying it on the side table. "I thought you might need sustenance before unraveling a 2-decade-old mystery." She sliced the loaf with a steady hand, the yeasty aroma spreading through the room like a benediction. John offered her the letter. She peered at it thoughtfully, then nodded. Her handwriting trembled with excitement. She believed this chest, this oak chest, would unlock something extraordinary. As they spread butter on steaming slices, a soft knock came at the front door. John hesitated. He and Samuel had pledged to keep the manor their sanctuary. Yet when he opened the door, there stood Rosa, her lithe frame stooped but spirit unbowed, holding the small, wide-eyed orphan Anna by the hand. Anna's cheeks were smudged with charcoal, and her little dress was dusted with the powdery residue of some artistic venture. Rosa's voice was warm but firm. "I found her wandering near the garden gate. She said she was waiting for someone named Emily." Anna peered shyly at John, her large brown eyes brimming with quiet wisdom that belied her 8 years. She clutched a ragged doll close to her chest and offered him a tentative smile. Samuel, who had been sketching on the library floor, looked up and extended his crayon toward her. "Hi, I'm Sam," he said. "Do you like to draw?" Anna nodded. "My mother used to draw here," she whispered. "She said she had a friend named Emily." At that moment, John felt a deep tug at his conscience. Part of him feared the fragility of Gordon's heart, the pain another child might bear. Yet Anna's innocent trust, her connection to Emily, stirred something protective and tender within him. Clara gently ushered Anna inside, wrapping a woolen shawl around her shoulders. John led the trio into the parlor, where he remembered Emily's final words about a secret prototype, a project she had hinted would reshape their lives. He shook off hesitation and offered Anna a seat. "You can stay until we find out more," he found himself saying, the words unexpected yet wholly right. Just then, the heavy front door swung open with a harsh clang. John's 2 cousins, Robert and Elaine, stormed in, their tailored suits and glossy shoes belying their true intentions. They demanded immediate sale of the manor, citing debts that could not wait. Robert's voice was sharp as shattered glass. "We can't let this archaic relic bankrupt us all." John felt the weight of his inheritance press upon him like iron shackles. This house, built by generations of Whitakers, seemed more burden than gift. He swallowed hard, his knuckles whitening around the armrest. Samuel rose and turned to his father. "Grandpa, maybe Emily left us a clue in the attic, like the note says. We could find it before you sign anything." Anna's eyes lit up, and she slipped from her chair to tug at John's sleeve. "The rose carving," she murmured. "I saw one halfway up the attic stairs." The very idea of a puzzle left by Emily gave John's heart a tremor of hope. He turned to Clara. "Will you help us translate any technical notes we find?" Clara nodded, her eyes sparkling. "I've missed a good mystery," she admitted, smiling. He rose, steeling himself. "I'll call Dr. Miguel," he said. "He can stall the creditors." The sound of the grandfather clock booming each hour punctuated the room, magnifying John's indecision. With every echo, he felt time slipping like sand through his fingers. Moments later, Dr. Miguel, an affable lawyer with a gentle voice and keen eyes, arrived. His presence was reassuring. He placed a firm hand on John's shoulder and promised to file for an extension on the sale. "No signatures until you know what Emily left behind," he declared. The cousins sputtered but withdrew for the time being, their departure marked by the ominous slam of the front door. A hush settled. Samuel and Anna exchanged a glance, hands brushing. They rose in unison and led the way toward the narrow staircase to the attic. The beam of Clara's lantern illuminated the carved rose on the 3rd step. John inhaled sharply, pain, fear, and a surging thrill of possibility warred within him. The girl's charcoal-smudged sleeves brushed against his arm as they climbed. In Emily's private domain, among dust-moted shafts of moonlight, John's pulses hammered like war drums. The rose carving beckoned them forward to a weathered chest bound in iron straps. With deliberate motion, he turned the latch. A hollow breath escaped him as the lid creaked open, revealing stacks of folded letters, delicate glass vials, and a slender wooden blueprint tube tied with red ribbon. Anna let out a small gasp of wonder. Samuel reached forward, fingertips trembling, as he withdrew the top envelope. Clara read the faded label, Blueprints for Project Aurora. John recognized Emily's handwriting once more, and beneath it, a small sketch of a device shaped like a rose in bloom. He closed his eyes and whispered, maybe for the first time, our future truly depends on the heart of a child. The attic was silent except for the guileless breathing of Anna and Samuel, their faces alight with unspoken promise. John felt the burden of his lineage shift, transformed at last into a mission of discovery and hope. Together, they descended into the night, clutching Emily's legacy close as the grandfather clock chimed again, this time heralding not an ending, but the dawn of revelation. A gray morning mist clung to the Whitaker estate, as if the heavens themselves sought to veil the turmoil within. John Whitaker stood at the foot of the grand staircase when the heavy mahogany doors burst open, admitting 3 grim-faced executives from Whitaker National Bank. Their polished black shoes clicked ominously against the marble foyer. Each carried a leather briefcase bulging with documents, sales contracts, appraisals, deeds, all demanding John's signature. At their head was Mr. James Bellinger, late 40s, 6 feet tall, lean as a blade in his tailored charcoal gray suit. His dark hair was slicked back with cold precision, and his pale green eyes betrayed no flicker of mercy. He surveyed John with an expression as impassive as stone. "Mr. Whitaker," he said in a voice low and smooth, "the bank requires your cooperation. We have debts to settle." John's chest tightened. He recalled Emily's gentle urging after their last meeting with creditors. "You must hold fast to what matters," she had whispered, brushing back his hair as moonlight painted her face. He inhaled slowly, feeling the memory boost his resolve. "I will not sign anything," he answered, his tone steady. "Not until I know what Emily left behind." The executives exchanged glances. Bellinger's lips curved faintly. "Then you leave us no choice but to pursue legal remedies." He handed John a thick packet. "We'll see you in court." With that, they turned on their heels, the echo of their footsteps a grim percussion that filled the cavernous foyer. Alone once more, John surveyed the main hall. Above him, crystal chandeliers hung broken, their shards of glass jagged like fallen stars. The once lavish Persian rugs lay threadbare, colors faded to ghostly whispers of burgundy and gold. Faded tapestries flanked the walls, depicting Whitaker ancestors in stern poses. Every sigh of the draft seemed to carry ghostly murmurs, ghosts of parties long ended, of dancing shadows and laughter now lost to time. John closed his eyes and saw Emily's laughter illuminating this very room. He saw her kneeling beside him, screwdriver in hand, tinkering with the ornate grandfather clock to coax its pendulum back to life. "Even time needs a little coaxing," she teased, wiping a streak of grease from his cheek. In his mind's eye, she smiled, those hazel eyes bright with mischief. Shaking himself free of the vision, John turned toward the parlor doorway, where Anna had just seated Samuel at the old Steinway piano. Anna's posture was straight, her small fingers hovering above ivory keys. "Listen," she whispered, and then began a gentle melody Emily had taught them both, a lilting waltz that felt like a soft embrace against the morning's chill. Samuel followed, his 9-year-old hands tentative but sure, the notes trembling into the high ceiling like dust motes dancing in sunlight. Their music carved out a sanctuary of tenderness amid the storm closing in. When a last note faded, Clara appeared at the doorway, carrying a tray of steaming mugs. "For strength," she said, her voice warm as molten honey. Inside each cup was thick, aromatic hot chocolate sprinkled with cinnamon, Emily's recipe for courage. The ritual sustained them against encroaching darkness. One by one, they raised their mugs in silent solidarity before sipping, the sweetness an anchor against despair. Yet as John swallowed the soothing sweetness, guilt gnawed at him. He had promised Emily he would protect her legacy, Now it felt as though he had failed her twice, once in letting creditors encroach, and again in permitting doubt to claim his heart. He looked down at his trembling hands, remembering how she had placed them together in hers. "You are stronger than the hills," she used to say. His eyes stung with tears he refused to shed. A light knock interrupted his thoughts. Rosa entered, waving a faded envelope. "This arrived for you today," she said. Her voice was gentle but carried an unexpected urgency. John recognized the handwriting of a distant Whitaker cousin, one he barely remembered but who had once attended lavish family reunions. He slit the seal and unfolded the paper. His cousin offered assistance, but with a chilling caveat: the manor would have to be sold to developers who planned to raise the house and erect luxury condominiums in its place. John's breath caught. The weight of inheritance pressed down on him like iron shackles. This was no charitable offer, but a demand in disguise. Before he could respond, he saw Anna's curious face peering around Rosa's shawl. The child's wide brown eyes reflected both concern and a wisdom beyond her years. She stepped forward, her small shoes scuffing the carpet. "Grandpa," she said softly, "what does inheritance mean?" Her question landed like a stone in John's chest. He knelt to meet her gaze and took her hand. He swallowed hard, gathering his thoughts. "Inheritance," he began, voice trembling, "is not just what we receive. It's a mission entrusted to us. It's the lessons and dreams of those who came before, and the promise that we will carry them forward." Anna nodded, as if that answered every question. She turned and beckoned Samuel. Together, they scampered toward the staircase. John rose, determination blossoming through the fog of fear. He turned to Dr. Miguel, who had quietly entered behind Rosa, motioning to the letter. Dr. Miguel's dark eyes were steady. "I will file for an injunction and prepare for a hearing. We can contest the bank's claim and your cousin's demand, but we must gather evidence." He placed a comforting hand on John's shoulder. "We'll need proof of Emily's intentions, anything that shows the manor's value beyond mere bricks and mortar." John nodded. "I'll start tonight." True to his word, as dusk fell, he ascended the narrow stairs to the attic once more. The lantern's beam danced across rafters and cobwebs, revealing dusty crates and stacks of Emily's personal effects. He opened each container, sifting through yellow documents, ledger books annotated in Emily's careful script, and faded photographs of family gatherings. Each item felt like a fragment of her soul, rich with purpose. Meanwhile, Anna sat at the library desk, charcoal smudged on her fingers, drawing a precise map of the entire manor. She traced rooms where Emily had taught lessons, corners where she had hidden clues, and the spiral staircase that led to the attic. Samuel hovered beside her, re-sketching the map in charcoal again and again, his dark green eyes narrowed in concentration. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint from Clara's afternoon touch-up, whitewash to brighten a sconce, rose-colored streaks to revive a peeling arch. The scent mingled with the musty attic odors, a curious counterpoint of renewal and decay. Late that night, as the household lay in restless slumber, Anna sat beside her grandfather's bed and softly recited Emily's favorite sayings. "Courage grows in unlikely places, a dream told aloud can move mountains, and a single heart can change the world." John listened, breathing deeply, the words soothing the guilt that clawed at him. In the mirror across the room, he caught a glimpse of his lined face and mournful eyes. He straightened his shoulders and whispered, "I will not fail you again, my love." But somewhere in the heart of Bellinger's fortress-like office, the antagonist studied legal tomes and financial ledgers, crafting his next move with the same methodical precision he applied to his crisp suits. He lined up his army of attorneys like chess pieces, each prepared to strike at the Whitakers' vulnerability. The following morning, sunlight filtered through stained glass windows of the courthouse, painting its marble floors in ruby and emerald hues. John, Clara, Dr. Miguel, Anna, and Samuel assembled before the heavy oak doors to the hearing room. Their hearts pounded in unison, fear, determination, and hope intertwined in a single cadence. Bellinger's polished shoes were already echoing somewhere within, and his legal team, waited behind a polished bench. As the door swung open, a hush fell over the gathered crowd. All eyes turned to John, who stepped forward, shoulders squared, clutching Emily's faded documents. In that instant, he knew the forces arrayed against them were formidable, but so too was the legacy of love and courage Emily had left behind. The echo of her voice, the rhythm of her heartbeat in his memory, and the trust of two innocent children would carry him through whatever lay beyond those doors. And so, hand in hand, they crossed the threshold into the most crucial battle of their lives. The marble-walled courtroom felt more cathedral than civic chamber, its towering pillars of pale stone rising toward a vaulted ceiling, each vein of gray in the marble like a frozen tear. A hush rippled through the benches as spectators pressed forward, their murmurs thready whispers clinging to the hushed air. Light slanted through stained glass windows, painting the floor in muted pans of crimson and sapphire. At the front, the judge's bench sat elevated, a carved oak throne that underscored both power and solemnity. Dr. Miguel rose first, his tall frame commanding attention as he approached the lectern. He smoothed back his salt and pepper hair and cleared his throat. In measured, impassioned tones, he unfurled Emily Whitaker's legacy, her brittle love letters and faded prototype blueprints, each a testament to a life lived in service of community and invention. "Your Honor," he declared, sliding a bundle of delicate papers across the polished surface, "these are not mere relics. They are the livelihood of hope, the blueprint of a benevolent vision." He quoted Emily's own words, "A home is only as valuable as the lives it shelters," and described the humming copper coil she designed to purify rainwater for families in need. His voice trembled only once when he described how Emily had given her prototypes freely to an orphanage down the road, ensuring children had clean water and bright futures. From his seat in the gallery, John Whitaker watched Dr. Miguel's every gesture with a swelling heart. Beside him, Anna sat, her spine straight, small hands clasped in her lap, while Samuel's brown eyes reflected a fierce gleam of hope. The two children, so young yet so resolute, seemed to John like twin beacons in a storm. He drew a slow breath, recalling the moment Anna had first held Emily's journal to her chest and pledged to guard her memory. Then, sharp as a blade cutting through silence, the opposing counsel rose. A sleek professional in a navy suit and silver tie, he sneered at the scattered papers. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, voice crisp, "we are here not to valorize sentiment, but to uphold the cold, hard metrics of finance." He tapped the contract before him. "This estate is a liability. We speak of economic reality, not fanciful dreams penned on coffee-stained parchment. Wealth is measured in dollars, not nostalgia." Immediately, Anna stood. The murmur of the courtroom hushed into pin-drop silence. The 8-year-old climbed a few steps to the lectern, her tiny hands gripping the edge as though holding the weight of the world. She took a shaky breath, lifted a neatly folded letter, and read in a voice that was at once soft and unwavering. "Dear John, always remember, love is the only inheritance that endures beyond death. Nurture it, and it will grow." As her words floated across the hushed space, John felt his chest tighten. Samuel squeezed his hand, eyes glistening with tears of pride. The courtroom seemed to exhale as emotion pooled in the golden light. Several rows back, a woman dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. The judge leaned forward, his stern facade cracking just enough to reveal the flicker of humanity beneath the robe. Samuel slipped a small taper candle from his jacket pocket, one rescued from the Whitaker attic, and struck a match. The flame danced into existence, sending a soft glow across his cherubic face. He set it in a brass holder on the table beside Dr. Miguel's papers. In that single, tremulous flame, the aroma of old wax and whispered prayers seemed to fill the room, a ritual of hope kindled in the face of adversity. When Dr. Miguel resumed, he introduced records of Emily's community gatherings held in the very halls they now occupied. He passed around a leather-bound ledger listing dates of charitable workshops, each entry endorsed by local officials. He called witnesses, a teacher whose students had built toys from Emily's spare parts, a pastor who had distributed Emily's repaired clocks to the elderly. Then, to the court's astonishment, he called Rosa forward. The elderly woman shambled to the stand, her silver hair a halo in the chamber light. Her voice trembled with age as she recounted Emily's generosity, how she had opened her home to strangers, fed displaced families, and stitched quilts from recycled fabric scraps. Next, John himself rose. Heart pounding, he met Mr. Bellinger's cold gaze across the aisle. He felt the corporate magnate's skepticism like industrial chill, but John stood firm. He described the Whitaker estate not as an asset to liquidate, but as a living testament to a life of compassion. With each measured word, his voice gained strength. "My wife's greatest invention was her kindness," he said, pressing both hands flat against the polished wood rail. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. If love cannot be weighed in bank statements, then what is the measure of wealth? The judge fingered his fountain pen, scanning the evidence before him. The air grew taut, as if every breath might shatter the fragile balance. Mr. Bellinger's associates hovered anxiously, their expensive shoes scuffing the marble. Even he, master of corporate strategy, looked uncertain under the gravity of shared humanity. Finally, the judge set down his pen. He leaned forward, the faint creak of leather as he straightened in his chair. With a measured nod, he pronounced, "The court finds in favor of Mr. John Whitaker and the minor beneficiaries of this estate. The misguided claims of Whitaker National Bank are hereby dismissed. This manor shall remain in trusted hands for the purpose of community service and preservation." A hush fell, then a surge of exultation. John felt his knees weaken as applause and tears broke loose. Anna ran to his side and flung her arms around him, her soft curls tickling his cheek. Samuel grabbed his other hand, his green eyes shining brighter than any jewel. Clara dabbed at her eyes, smiling through tears. Even Mr. Bellinger rose, shaking John's hand with a respectful firmness that spoke of grudging admiration. In the courtroom's gilded exit hall, shafts of late afternoon sun fell through towering windows, gilding the faces of those emerging from battle. John, Anna, and Samuel stepped into that light, hand in hand, their silhouettes cast long upon the marble floor. As they walked away, the hush of the courtroom transformed into a chorus of well-wishers. There, beneath the hush and gilded glow, they carried more than victory. They bore a renewed conviction that love, once unleashed, cannot be contained by walls or contracts, but endures as the truest legacy of all. A golden dawn spilled across the Whitaker estate as sunlight poured through the tall mullioned windows of the ballroom, illuminating motes of dust dancing like fireflies. The heavy curtains, long drooping and moth-eaten, were drawn back with deliberate ceremony, allowing soft beams of light to flood the expansive room. For the first time in months, the wide parquet floor glowed with promise rather than gloom, and the air, cool and crisp, carried the scent of fresh beginnings. John Whitaker stood near the doorway, watching his grandchildren move with purpose. Samuel, sleeves rolled to his elbows, swept aside cobwebs that clung to the corners of the vaulted ceiling. Anna, her dark brown braids swaying, reached up with a feather duster to coax away the last wisps of spider threads. With each stroke, they reclaimed the room from memories of neglect, their small hands sweeping away both dust and sorrow. In the adjoining kitchen, Clara tended the ancient brick oven. The cold hearth, silent for decades, came alive under her careful ministrations. She struck flint against steel, coaxing a spark that grew into a flickering flame. Logs glowed amber, and soon a gentle roar warmed the stones. Through the archway, the children watched as she shaped dough with flour-dusted fingers, molding loaves that promised to rise as surely as hope itself. Rosa arrived at the back door bearing clay pots brimming with rose seeds, heirlooms from Emily's very first garden. Each seed was a testament to Emily's belief in renewal. John knelt beside Anna as she carefully filled a trough with rich, dark soil, her small hands pressing each seed into the earth with reverence. The two worked side by side, their faces lit by anticipation as they covered the seeds with a light dusting of earth and whispered blessings over them. Nearby, Samuel carried an old gilded frame, a treasured portrait of Emily smiling beneath a rose arbor. He cradled it like a newborn, stepping lightly across the stone floor to hang it back on its rightful nail above the mantel. As the portrait settled into place, Samuel stepped back, his chest puffed with pride, knowing he had restored a piece of his grandmother's presence to the home. As the oven's warmth bloomed, Clara opened its door and released a swirl of steam and bread's earthy aroma. The scent of fresh loaf mingled with the tang of damp soil and the faint perfume of rose petals drifting through the open windows. John inhaled deeply, letting the fragrance fill his lungs and steady his heart. This fusion of aromas was the symphony of restoration, bread, earth, and blossom entwined. By mid-morning, a steady stream of volunteers arrived, neighbors who had once received Emily's kindness, now returning the favor. They carried paint buckets and brushes, eager to lend their strength. Clara organized them into teams for art workshops in the newly cleared side parlors. One group painted murals of wildflowers on walls, another fashioned papier-mâché birds to hang from the rafters. Children and elders alike gathered around long tables, sketching together under Clara's gentle guidance. At noon, John called everyone into a circle in the ballroom for the family's time-honored ritual. Clara poured steaming mugs of hot chocolate, thick and bittersweet, into chipped china cups. Anna offered trays of freshly sliced bread, its crumb warm and soft. They stood shoulder to shoulder, each raising a cup in silent tribute to Emily. In that moment, the collective heartbeat of the community pulsed with shared memories, each sip a salute to love's endurance. After the circle, John discovered, tucked behind Emily's portrait, a small brass box containing her prototype, an intricate mechanical rose. With a soft click, he wound its key, and the petals unfolded in a graceful spiral. A faint chime echoed through the corridor as tiny gears turned, releasing a gentle melody Emily had composed for the manor. The tinkling tune cascaded down the halls, weaving hope into every corner. John closed his eyes as the music played, memories of Emily guiding his thoughts. He saw her gentle smile, heard her laughter mingling with the melody. "She lives on," he whispered, heart swelling, more vividly than ever in these echoing notes. The ballroom walls, once hollow witnesses to loss, now resonated with possibility. Through the arched doorway, John beheld the garden beyond, beds lush with early sprigs of rose and wildflower, their buds taut and eager under the bright sun. Green tendrils curled around wrought iron trellises, and butterflies flitted among the blossoms. Every hue, from pale blush to deep crimson, danced under the sky's azure gaze. The sight overwhelmed him. This living tapestry was Emily's enduring gift to the world. Inside, Anna reclaimed her place at the Steinway piano. She lifted the fallboard, fingers poised above the keys, and began to play the waltz she and Samuel had performed in court. This time, the melody unfurled with richer harmonies and more confident rhythms. Each chord blossomed like a rose in bloom, her delicate frame swaying with the music's flow. Samuel joined her for the finale, stepping forward to play a shining solo at the piano's top octaves. His small hands struck chords pure and bright, the notes ringing clear as a bell. The combined performance was a joyous ode, a living tribute to Emily's spirit, carried forward by her grandchildren's devotion. As the final chord faded, a hush enveloped the room. Then, as one, the family, volunteers, and neighbors raised their mugs in a silent toast. No words were needed. Their unity spoke volumes. They savored the warmth of shared triumph, its glow as comforting as the hearth's embers. As evening approached, John and Anna returned to the hearth's glow. They placed the last remaining candle, a tall white taper, from the attic in front of Emily's portrait. Together, they struck a match and let the flame take hold. Its gentle light flickered against the painted glass of the portrait frame, casting Emily's smile in soft focus. Anna leaned against her grandfather's side, and John wrapped an arm around her shoulders. They gazed into the candle's dancing flame, its glow reflecting in their eyes. He whispered, "Walls may shelter us, but it is our bonds that make a home." Anna nodded, her face serene in the candlelight. And so the chapter closed not on an ending, but on a promise that the heart of the Whitaker Manor would never again be still, for it now pulsed with life renewed, its legacy safeguarded by love, memory, and the unbreakable ties that bound them all. A pale dawn seeped through the heavy crimson drapes of the Whitaker Manor's master bedroom, casting everything in muted shades of pewter and ash. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of frost on the lawn below. John Whitaker lay awake beneath his quilt, listening to the whisper of the wind against the window panes. With a deliberate breath, he swung his legs over the edge of the bed and rose, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight. Drawn by a silent impulse, he crossed the room and paused before a grand, ornately carved frame hanging above the fireplace. He reached out, feeling the chill of the gilded wood against his fingertips, and gently lifted it away from the wall. There, tucked behind the portrait of Emily laughing beneath a summer sky, lay a small, dust-covered photo frame. Its hand-carved edges were worn smooth by decades of careful handling, the dark oak polished to a soft sheen. Nestled within was a single slip of paper inscribed in Emily's flowing script, for the future she dreamed. John's breath caught. He traced the words with reverence, then turned to the doorway to find Anna and Samuel standing there, their eyes wide with curiosity. The children, roused earlier by the soft glow of morning, had followed his footsteps. Anna's plump cheeks were tinged rose by the cold, and Samuel's tousled hair stuck out in errant curls that caught the gray light. Both leaned forward, hungry for discovery. "Emily always believed tomorrow could be brighter," John whispered, pressing the note to his chest. Anna and Samuel exchanged eager glances, their own hopes reflected in the morning's fragile light. He moved to the breakfast table where Clara had already placed a loaf of freshly baked bread, still warm from the oven. The crust crackled under his knife as he sliced a generous piece and passed it to the children. Together, in a quiet ritual of sustenance and solidarity, they tasted the first morsel of the day. Each crumb was savored, each crumb a small victory. Their modest breakfast was interrupted by a knock at the front door. John answered to find Luis, Emily's former colleague from the engineering firm, holding an ancient slide projector under one arm. The machine's metal casing was scuffed, and the leather handle showed signs of long-unused journeys. Luis's dark eyes glimmered with unspoken memories as he entered the foyer. "I found this in the old lab down the hall," he said, nodding toward the attic staircase. Emily used it to demo her earliest designs. In the dusty ballroom, the projector was set upon a folding table. Clara adjusted the lens as Anna and Samuel hovered nearby, anticipation lighting their faces. With a soft click, the projector sprang to life, its bulb flickering and the film reel toiling forward. Shadows danced across the far wall, first the skeletal outline of a copper coil invention, then diagrams of interlocking gears, and finally Emily's proud smile as she stood beside her creations. Each slide brought a fresh gasp of wonder. Clara, leaning over the projector's base, translated Emily's technical annotations into language the children could grasp. "This," she said, pointing to a sketch of a self-watering planter, was her early attempt to help gardens survive drought. Anna reached out as if to touch the image, her fingertips brushing the ghost of ink on the plaster. Samuel's green-flecked eyes flickered with recognition. He remembered Emily teaching him to coax life from the parched rose bushes in the estate's conservatory. Amid the play of light and shadow, John slipped away into memory. He saw Emily on a balmy autumn afternoon, guiding Samuel's small hands as they flew a homemade kite over the back lawn. The string looped through his fingers, wind tugging at the kite's tail, while Emily laughed as she chased their creation across the grass. That laughter now echoed in his mind, an inseparable accompaniment to the projector's rhythmic hum. When the last slide clicked into place, Anna fetched her sketchbook. She traced each diagram with a tentative finger, then placed her pencil against the paper. Her hand moved confidently, sketching ideas for how the old manor could be revitalized using Emily's designs. A windfall of creativity seemed to flow through her, bright as sunlight in the gray room. But even as inspiration bloomed, their progress was shadowed by reality. Funds were scarce. The cost of materials, the copper tubing, the tapestry pattern tiles, the specialized gears, loomed large. John frowned, his hopeful smile faltering. Before he could voice his concern, Samuel stepped forward. "We could ask the neighbors," he offered, eyes shining. "Remember how Emily always said small acts of kindness could move mountains?" As if on cue, Rosa glided in from the garden doors, her silver hair trailing like starlight. She held a paper sack filled with garden tools donated by the local co-op. "The secret is believing in the power of small gestures," she reminded them, adjusting her knitted shawl. Her words filled the room like sunlight through frost-laden branches, warming John's resolve. Clara, leaning against the empty mantel, watched the children's faces as they lit up with community spirit. John realized that the true alchemy of innovation lay not in profit margins, but in the generosity of many small hearts. Everything she invented came from love, he thought. Not from laboratories, but from her desire to help others. With renewed determination, they began to refurbish the old projector. The loft smelled of sawdust and machine oil as they disassembled its housing. Metal gears, tarnished by time, glinted in the lantern light. John sanded each surface, sending soft clouds of rust into the air. Clara found a vial of cleaning solution in Emily's chemist kit and used it to polish the brass fittings. Samuel handled the small parts with solemn care, as if aware that each cog and wheel was a fragment of his grandmother's ingenuity. Word of their work spread quickly. By midday, Donna Estella, the retired city librarian known for her mastery of paperwork, arrived clutching a stack of grant applications and donation forms. "I'll handle the red tape," she announced, her bright eyes alight with purpose. Anna, breathless with excitement, bounded over to her, peppering her with questions about budgets and permits. "Experience is as precious as gold," Donna Estella said, giving Anna's hand a reassuring squeeze. Late that afternoon, the projector's bulb glowed once more. John loaded the first restored slide, the one of Emily's proud smile, into the carriage. The machine whirred, gears meshed, and Emily's face bloomed onto the ballroom wall in crisp detail. Anna and Samuel held John's hands as the sight brought tears to their eyes. For a moment, the manor was silent except for the soft whir of the projector, and then the hush was broken by John's whispered vow: "We will honor her dream." Together, they stepped onto the wide veranda at the rear of the house. The sky had cleared, revealing a tapestry of lavender clouds against an expanse of pale blue. Below them, the vast grounds stretched out, rolling lawns, newly turned flower beds, and the faint outline of future workshops under the old oak trees. The wind stirred the hem of John's coat and carried with it Emily's promise of Dawn's renewal. Anna leaned her head on her grandfather's shoulder, and Samuel perched on the railing beside them, eyes shining with promise. The cold morning had given way to a gentle warmth, and in that golden moment, the Whitaker family stood united, past, present, and future converging in the light of Emily's enduring legacy. They were ready to breathe new life into the manor she had loved, ensuring that her forgotten talents would echo across generations to come. Dawn broke like a benediction over the Whitaker estate, the first rays of sun gilding the freshly planted flower beds with liquid gold. Petals unfurled toward the warming light. Pale daisies stretched their soft white arms, rosebuds yawned into delicate blush, and bluebells nodded in silent greeting. A gentle breeze stirred the air, carrying the faint perfume of damp soil and new blossoms. It was as though the garden itself had awoken from a long winter slumber, ready at last to share its beauty. On the front door, a handmade poster proclaimed the day's purpose in flowing script: Memories and Inventions Fair Sunday. Painted wildflowers curled around the border, and beneath the title, an arrow pointed toward the courtyard. John stepped back to admire it, its cheerful colors a promise of hope rekindled. Under the broad oak that shaded the courtyard, Alcindo, the neighborhood carpenter, knelt amid stacks of rough-hewn lumber. His hands, strong and splintered, guided Anna's smaller fingers as they fitted together the sides of a wooden stall. The board surface was coarse under their hands, each groove confessing the grain's anonymous history. Fresh varnish glistened where Alcindo had rubbed it in, an intoxicating blend of pine resin and turpentine that mingled with the early morning dew. Nearby, Samuel arranged Emily's drawings under glass panes atop a folding table. Each sketch, her prototypes for water-purifying devices and miniature wind turbines, lay protected and inviting. The glass was cool beneath Samuel's palm, its surface a mirror reflecting his awestruck gaze. He straightened each frame with deliberation, ensuring every blueprint caught the morning light just so, the lines crisp and hopeful. As word spread, families began to arrive, clustering at the iron gates. Curious children skipped through the grass, their laughter bright as bells, while parents exchanged warm greetings. One elderly woman, eyes shining with recognition, approached the sketch display and whispered, "I remember when she taught me to build a simple solar oven right here under that oak." Her voice trembled with gratitude, and Samuel felt a profound swell of emotion at the power of Emily's humble lessons. Clara, ever the gracious hostess, moved among the stalls carrying a delicate silver tray. She poured fragrant chamomile tea into mismatched china cups, steam curling like soft ghosts into the air. Platters of butter cookies, still warm from the oven, completed the spread. Each visitor paused to sip and nibble, closing their eyes as distant memories unfurled. Baptisms in the garden, classes in the conservatory, evenings of music and laughter echoing through grand halls. Conversation flowed, each anecdote stitching the community's fractured edges back together. At midday, Dr. Miguel ascended a low platform, an upturned crate draped with a white linen cloth. He cleared his throat and announced a silent auction to raise funds for the manor's continuing restoration. Bidders would inscribe their offers on cards slipped into a wooden box, the highest bid to claim each lot. "Your generosity will ensure Emily's vision endures," he declared, voice ringing with conviction. Anna stood beside him, clutching the prototype of tomorrow, an unfinished mechanism of brass cogs engraved with Emily's name in tiny cursive. The device looked almost like a metallic flower bud, each petal-shaped gear poised to unfurl. Anna's voice, unsteady yet determined, introduced the invention. "This was her dream," she said. "With your support, we can bring it to life." A hush fell as the bidding began. To John's shock, a well-dressed man in a tailored suit, one of the distant cousins, slipped a card into the box with a figure so high it made John's breath catch. He recognized the man's ambition. He planned to buy this estate for strip malls and condominiums. As more cards appeared, each bearing sums that threatened to eclipse the family's modest means, tension coiled in the courtyard like a gathering storm. Anna slipped close to her grandfather's side and whispered, "They don't understand her dream." Her words cut through John's rising panic, reminding him that money alone could never quantify Emily's legacy. Then, as if summoned by hope itself, the community rallied. A local baker wrote down enough to secure Emily's rose seeds. A former student offered to match bids up to a set limit for the workshop space. A team of gardeners pledged their labor for every dollar spent on soil and plants. Each card carried not just currency, but a story of gardens revived, of thirst quenched, of minds awakened by Emily's simple inventions. John watched, tears pricking his eyes, as the greedy cousin glanced at his own card, then withdrew it. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. The man stepped forward, face unsettled, and admitted, I can't bid against this." He slipped his card back to Dr. Miguel and offered a quiet apology. Then came the applause, tentative at first, then swelling into a roar of encouragement. Neighbors embraced one another. Children danced in the grass, and Clara wept softly as she poured more tea. The tension that had threatened to choke the day dissolved in a collective exhale of relief. To mark the moment, everyone gathered around a long wooden table hewn from a fallen oak limb. Baskets of freshly baked bread, still steaming, passed from hand to hand, along with mugs of hot chocolate. They sat shoulder to shoulder, sharing slices and stories as though tending a communal hearth. Each crust and sip was imbued with gratitude and a shared resolve to keep Emily's spirit alive. As the sun dipped low, Anna and Samuel climbed onto the modest platform beside the prototype display. Hand in hand, they faced the assembled crowd. Samuel cleared his throat, then began to play the waltz Emily had composed, the same melody Anna had performed in the courthouse. Anna joined, her sweet voice humming the tune. Their performance drifted through the garden like a prayer of thanksgiving, weaving hope into every heart. When the final note faded, silence lingered briefly, then the applause returned, this time with tears and laughter intertwined. John rose, brushing crumbs from his trousers, and stepped to his grandchildren's side. He raised his hand, and the courtyard fell into respectful hush once more. He spoke simply, "What matters most are not the walls that enclose us, but the bonds that unite us." His gaze swept over every face, old friends, new allies, passing strangers made family by Emily's legacy. Today, we awaken more than a garden. We awakened a community. In the fading light, the poster on the door fluttered in the breeze, its colors softened by evening's glow. Anna and Samuel lingered at the edge of the improvised stage, their silhouettes framed by lanterns lit along the garden path. They looked toward the oak where Emily once taught and where new hopes now took root. And so the day ended not with finality, but with promise, a promise that the Whitaker Manor, once silent and neglected, had become a living testament to love, innovation, and the enduring power of a community awakened from its slumber. A hush deeper than midnight filled the Whitaker Manor as John Whitaker wandered its silent halls. The lamps he carried cast trembling pools of light on the marble floors. His footsteps echoed off empty corridors lined with relics of happier days. Portraits of Emily and generations past glowed dimly, their painted eyes seeming to follow him. Sleep eluded him, replaced by a thrumming urgency in his chest. At the window, he paused, staring out at the moonlit gardens where shadows of roses reached toward stars. In that stillness, a memory seared through him. Emily huddled over a battered table in the attic, a flickering lamplight dancing across her determined face as she devoured articles on social justice. Her ink-stained fingertips turned pages feverishly, absorbing stories of marginalized communities and grassroots change. John could almost hear her whispering passages to herself. The purpose of invention is to serve humanity, not just profit. That recollection ignited a spark within him. By dawn, John had resolved to honor Emily's convictions. He retreated to his study and began drafting a series of free public lectures to be hosted at the manor on topics ranging from community organizing to technological empowerment. As he dipped his quill into ink, he envisioned leaders, teachers, and citizens gathering under Emily's roof to exchange ideas and catalyze change. The next morning, John set pen to fine parchment. Each invitation card bore Emily's graceful script and was sealed with crimson wax embossed with the Whitaker family crest. He entrusted stacks of these elegant missives to Rosa, who delivered them by hand to mayors, school principals, union organizers, and clergy. With every closing click of her leather satchel, more seeds of revolution were sown. That afternoon, a fragrant breeze drifted through open parlor windows, carrying the heady perfume of lilacs. Rosa had placed a bouquet on the reception table, Emily's favorite bloom, its delicate blossoms nodding in approval. John inhaled deeply, letting the sweet, floral aroma buoy his spirits and reaffirm his purpose. In the corridor, Anna and Samuel unfurled wide sheets of paper and began sketching bold posters. Anna's colored pencils traced the contours of Emily's smiling face, beneath which she wrote, "Free public lectures, knowledge as power." Samuel added the dates and Emily's own motto, "Dream boldly, act kindly." They hung each poster carefully on walls and doorways, their cheerful colors contrasting the manor's aged stone. Word traveled swiftly. Before long, a young community journalist arrived with a notepad in hand and bright eyes keen to capture the manor's resurgence. He navigated the winding corridors, his recorder catching the creak of floorboards and the hum of earnest preparations. John greeted him warmly, offering a guided tour through rooms awaiting transformation. No sooner had initial excitement blossomed than challenges appeared. Inspectors from the Historical Preservation Office arrived, citing structural concerns and threatening to shut down the venue for public safety. Their official letters, the crackle of bureaucracy, landed like lead weights on John's desk. The lecture series, they insisted, could not proceed until extensive renovations were complete. Unfazed, Dr. Miguel stepped forward. He appealed directly to the city council, citing Emily's enormous contributions and the urgent need for these gatherings. He argued for an emergency permit, a temporary reprieve to host events under careful supervision. As he paced the marble lobby, he negotiated with officials by phone, his voice firm yet conciliatory, until at last the permit was granted with strict but manageable conditions. Meanwhile, Clara marshaled local artisans, teachers, and volunteers for hands-on workshops. The manor's grand ballroom transformed into an artful laboratory of ideas. Long tables groaned under the weight of paint jars, sewing machines, and prototype kits. Bakers offered bread baking demonstrations. Engineers showcased simple water filters. Poets held open mic workshops on justice. Clara's gentle guidance wove these disparate activities into a cohesive tapestry of community learning. On the eve of the first lecture, Samuel practiced a brief address in the hushed parlor. His small voice rang with surprising clarity as he declared, "Dreams are more precious than gold because gold can be spent, but a dream can change a life forever." John, standing behind him, felt warmth surge through his chest. She lives on in them, he thought, tears glimmering in his eyes as Samuel's confidence dispelled every lingering doubt. As dawn of the lecture day arrived, the manor had become a living crucible of memory and innovation. Tables lined the sunroom, displaying Emily's blueprints alongside freshly crafted prototypes by local makers. The grand staircase wore garlands of lilac, and the walls of the main chamber were draped with hand-painted banners proclaiming justice through creativity and heritage of hope. The first lecture opened with stirring narratives from women who had overcome injustice, farm workers who had formed cooperatives, single mothers who had used microloans to launch businesses, teachers who had created pop-up classrooms in abandoned lots. Their words resonated under the high ceilings, their courage echoing Emily's ethos that every small act could reverberate into profound transformation. Mid-lecture, Anna climbed the podium and read aloud a letter Emily had penned on a summer's eve. "We must be the bridge between what is and what could be, uniting hands to build a brighter tomorrow." The crowd fell silent, the flame of her words illuminating hearts as surely as any lamp. But just as triumph seemed assured, representatives from a neighboring development company filed in, their stern faces and expensive suits clashing with the room's hopeful atmosphere. They demanded the manor's closure and threatened legal action on account of the structural risks. A tense murmur rippled through the audience. In a spontaneous show of solidarity, the assembled community rose as one. They began to sing an old ballad Emily had often hummed, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die," their voices weaving through the columns and balconies. Grown men and women clasped hands, children joined in chorus, and the oppressive air of corporate intimidation yielded to a wave of collective resolve. Halfway through the hymn, a local council member, a stern bureaucrat with a reputation for rigidity, stepped forward, visibly moved. Tears glistened in his eyes as he wiped them away with a trembling handkerchief. He lifted his voice above the chorus, "Let these walls stand, not as monuments to the past, but as beacons for our future." His proclamation rang out like a gavel. Within hours, Dr. Miguel received formal notification. The manor was to remain open as an official cultural center. The injunction against gatherings was lifted, replaced by a proclamation honoring Emily's legacy and endorsing the lecture series as vital to civic life. That evening, beneath a sky glittering with stars, the entire community gathered in the moonlit garden. Each person held a delicate paper lantern, its translucent surface inscribed with hopes and dreams. At John's signal, they lit their lanterns and released them into the dark canopy above. The paper orbs drifted upward like glowing seeds, each a testament to possibility. John stood beside Anna and Samuel, their faces illuminated by the soft lantern glow. Together, they watched the lanterns ascend, their gentle light dissolving into the infinite night. In that luminous moment, the Whitaker Manor became something more than a home. It was a crucible of revolution, a sanctuary where seeds of justice and invention would sprout and flourish, carried on the shoulders of a community awakened to the promise of Emily's dream. Dawn broke over the Whitaker estate with a riot of sound and color. The hearty peal of children's laughter echoed through the ivy-clad corridors, punctuated by the steady thump of hammers and the rhythmic sweep of paint brushes on fresh plaster. In the east wing, shafts of pale morning light slanted through dust-speckled windows, illuminating beams of productivity. Volunteers restoring moldings, local artists layering bright hues on formerly drab walls. The manor that had once groaned under the weight of neglect now sang with renewed purpose. In one sunlit room, John Whitaker presided over a makeshift writing workshop. Long tables were strewn with journals, pens, and stacks of thick, unlined paper, the perfect canvas for raw recollection. As familiar faces and newcomers gathered, John's voice rang out, "Memory is our most precious inheritance. Speak your truth, share your story." He paced among them, pausing to offer encouragement. A gray-haired woman in spectacles wrote furiously, tears traced inked lines on her cheeks. A teenage girl closed her eyes and dipped her pen, her fingers trembling with anticipation. At a corner table, Anna knelt beside a small boy clutching a blank page. His shoulders hunched, he peeked up through dark lashes. "Tell me about your grandfather," she coaxed gently, her voice a soft melody. "What did he teach you?" The boy's fingers tightened around his pencil. Anna offered him a warm smile and produced a photograph of the garden in bloom. "Grandpa used to show me how roses open, petal by petal," the boy whispered. Anna nodded and handed him a sheet of paper. Slowly, his pencil scratched across the page, capturing the memory and words for the first time. Across the room, a volunteer dabbed thick cerulean blue onto a fresh page, the wet pigment gleaming under the skylight. The air smelled of fresh paint and paper pulp, a heady blend that made every surface feel ready to receive new stories. John ran a fingertip over the edge of a sheet, feeling its weight and texture, coarse fibers intertwined to form a singular vessel for memory. As afternoon light waned, Samuel gathered a small circle in the old music parlor. A dozen children perched on piano benches as he led them in an impromptu choir. His voice, clear and sure, carried a gentle melody, the lullaby Emily had composed years ago. One by one, the children's voices joined his, rising in soft harmony that filled the high-ceilinged room. The final chord quivered in the air like a held breath before dissolving into an awed silence. Yet even as creativity blossomed, practical obstacles emerged. John's letterpress office buzzed with disappointment. Every local publisher had declined the proposed anthology, Letters from the Heart, citing low commercial prospects for sentimental essays. John set aside yet another polite but firm rejection. He stared at the stack of stamped envelopes, heart-heavy but undeterred. Clara, ever resourceful, placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Let us publish it ourselves," she said. "We have volunteers with layout skills and a local printer willing to help." With that, she rallied a team to proofread, design, and typeset. Soon, laptops hummed late into the night as committed friends and neighbors assembled each page, determined to give Emily's words the voice they deserved. That evening, by candlelight, the community gathered in the library for a ceremonial reading. The glow from clustered tapers danced on polished oak shelves as readers, old and young, took turns reciting Emily's passages on kindness and resilience. Each voice wove threads of remembering, binding past and present in a delicate tapestry of shared emotion. Later, John lingered before a tall, ornate mirror in the hallway. His reflection stared back, lined, weary, resolute. He traced the carved frame with a trembling hand and whispered, "She inhabited every word she wrote." The mirror's silvered surface seemed to shimmer with her presence, as though Emily herself stood behind him, smiling in approval. Just then, the chime of a distant ringtone drew his attention. A renowned national journalist, intrigued by rumors of the manor's grassroots revival, had arrived unannounced. She breezed through the halls, camera in hand, her notebook bristling with questions. Her excitement was contagious. She marveled at the homemade presses, the handwritten signs, and the palpable camaraderie. John welcomed her, showing her the workshops and the budding printing press in the carriage house. Within hours, she was live streaming snippets, children reciting Emily's prose in urban cafes, elders poring over freshly bound pages in stately salons. The manor's quiet revolution spilled beyond its walls. But not all reactions were supportive. The same wealthy cousin who had once bid against the silent auction now threatened to pull sponsorship from the annual village fair. His terse message, "Cease this sentimental charade, or we retract our funding," arrived by courier, stamped with corporate insignia. Clara frowned as she read the ultimatum. "They can't silence us," she declared. Anna's eyes narrowed. "We'll show them our strength," she said, already sketching plans. Together, Anna and Samuel launched an online crowdfunding campaign. They photographed the manor's glowing windows at twilight, the printing press's rolling drum, and dozens of smiling volunteers. Each image carried a caption, "Help us share Emily's legacy, support community stories." Within hours, contributions streamed in from former students overseas, from strangers moved by the journalist's report, from local artisans pledging proceeds of handcrafted wares. John watched the numbers climb on his laptop screen, tears of pride misting his eyes. The richness of community support far outshone any corporate promise. He looked up to see Clara and Rosa beside him, their faces alight with shared triumph. In that moment, the manor felt less like inherited stone and more like a living organism sustained by countless hearts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the campaign's miraculous success, the first 500 pre-orders of Letters from the Future, the rebranded anthology, flooded in. John let out a joyful whoop that echoed through the halls. Volunteers cheered, spilling from the print room with arms raised. The house rocked with celebration. To mark the occasion, the entire community gathered once more in the restored ballroom for a simple harvest dance. Candles hung in copper lanterns overhead, their flames dancing to the strum of a lone guitarist. Families swayed in gentle arcs, backs bowed with age and shoulders light with hope. John took Rosa's hand and led her in a slow waltz. As he guided her across the shining floor, tears of gratitude glimmered in his eyes. Rosa chuckled softly, her own tears dampening his shoulder. The music wove around them, each note a testament to endurance and unity. Near the bay window, Anna leaned close to her grandfather. "Grandpa," she whispered, "we're making history." John kissed the top of her head, his heart swelling at her confidence. Finally, as the last chords faded, lights dimmed and candles were extinguished one by one. A hush settled over the manor, broken only by contented sighs and soft footsteps climbing the great staircase. John and Anna slipped out onto the rooftop terrace, where sky of velvet indigo teemed with stars. They wrapped themselves in blankets and leaned against the stone balustrade, gazing upward at the pinpricks of distant light. John exhaled a long sigh, the weight of months lifting from his shoulders. "Look," he said softly, pointing to the Milky Way's pale glow. "Each star is a story, connected in a web far greater than ourselves." Anna nestled closer, her head resting on his shoulder. Samuel soon joined them, bringing a flask of tea to ward off the night's chill. There under the cosmos, grandfather and grandchildren sat in companionable silence, 3 generations bound by love, memory, and a steadfast refusal to let voices of the past fall silent. In that moment, John knew Emily's dream had taken root, and its echoes would resound for all time. A bright, hopeful morning dawned over the Whitaker estate, its stately turrets bathed in sunlight that glimmered against dew-wet roses. Journalists clustered at the wrought iron gate, cameras poised and notebooks ready, while volunteers, some in matching sage green vests, bustled about, arranging chairs and hanging banners. The air hummed with anticipation. Today was the grand inauguration of the newly christened Cultural Center. Above the gate fluttered a vibrant ribbon banner, its hand-painted letters proclaiming in elegant script, Whitaker Center for Living Legacies. The banner's pastel swirls of rose, lavender, and mint echoed Emily's favorite color palette, a subtle tribute to her gentle spirit. Beneath it, a throng of well-wishers, neighbors, policymakers, former beneficiaries of Emily's generosity, gathered in murmured conversation, their faces alight with expectation. At exactly 10 o'clock, John emerged from the manor's wide front doors, flanked by Clara, Rosa, and Dr. Miguel. In his hands, he held scissors of burnished silver with ornate handles, Emily's own purchase from a Parisian atelier many years ago. The scissors gleamed under the sun, their blades whispering of countless ribbon cuttings past, each a symbol of fresh starts. John raised the scissors with deliberate ceremony. A hush fell. Anna stepped forward to unfurl the ribbon across the gate, a silken sash striped in rose and ivory. Samuel held the end steady, his small hands trembling with excitement. John inhaled deeply, scent of lilac and old stone mingling in the air, and with measured resolve, he snipped the ribbon. The sash fell away, drifting like a fallen petal. A ripple of applause broke across the crowd, a triumphant fanfare of new beginnings. John steadied himself against the gatepost and began his address. His voice quavered only once when he recited lines from a letter Emily had tucked into his desk drawer more than a decade ago. Our home is a vessel of stories. Let them sail beyond these walls. He spoke of Emily's belief in community, her dedication to service, and her insistence that every person, no matter how small their contribution, was vital to the tapestry of human connection. As he held the worn parchment between his hands, the audience leaned forward, captivated by the intimacy of his words. The paper, yellowed at the edges and softened by handling, felt impossibly fragile beneath his firm grip. Anna, standing just to his right, stepped up to the lectern and announced the center's inaugural program, Memories and Inventions workshops, welcoming artisans, engineers, storytellers, and dreamers to gather weekly in the restored ballroom. Her voice, soft yet clear, carried across the assembly. We will honor the past by creating the future together. Samuel, beaming proudly, accepted a small wooden trophy carved with a stylized oak leaf and inscribed Guardian of Legacy. His green-flecked eyes shone with pride as Dr. Miguel placed the honor gently in his hands. The crowd applauded again, cheers mingling with the songs of sparrows perched on the blooming wisteria above. At the foot of the gate, Rosa held aloft a brass plaque mounted on dark wood. The plaque bore the names Emily Whitaker, John Whitaker, Anna Whitaker, Samuel Whitaker, surrounded by a wreath of engraved roses. It was mounted on the stone pillar beside the gate, a permanent testament to the family whose love had sustained this place. As volunteers lifted it into position, its polished surface caught the sunlight, reflecting beams across the courtyard like tiny beacons of hope. Even as triumph glowed in every heart, a rumor lingered like a shadow at the edge of town. Developers were again circling, eyeing the estate for modern apartments. The specter of profit threatened to eclipse the community's victory. John sensed the unease ripple through those gathered, as if a stray breeze carried the echoes of greed. Rosa, stooping beneath the wisteria's tendrils, whispered a simple prayer of courage. Hands clasped, eyes closed, she invoked strength not just for the Whitakers, but for every soul who called this place home. Her whispered words seemed to settle over the crowd like a benediction, bolstering resolve in every chest. To mark this new chapter, John invited every visitor to plant a small sapling in the front flower beds. Volunteers knelt in the loamy soil, their trowels tapping soft rhythms as they nestled each young shoot into its designated hole. The scent of earth was rich underfoot, warm and alive with promise. As the newest tendrils of life took root, John felt a surge of connection. These saplings would grow alongside the center's mission, reaching skyward as symbols of communal care. In a quiet moment, John stepped back and surveyed the unfolding scene. The manor's ornate facade rose behind him, its centuries-old stones loyal sentinels to this wave of renewal. For the first time, he understood fully, this is not just my inheritance. It is everyone's to cherish and protect. His chest swelled with purpose, a steady warmth that banished any lingering echoes of doubt. The day's significance deepened when a prominent state senator, her reputation for championing cultural initiatives preceding her, arrived in a sleek sedan. She strode forward, applauded by the crowd, and took the lectern to announce that the Whitaker Center would be the model for similar living heritage sites across the region. Her words carried weight beyond the manor's gates. Parcels of farmland, disused libraries, even abandoned mills could find new life as centers of remembrance and innovation. She placed a hand gently on John's shoulder and vowed her unwavering support. John met her gaze with gratitude and solemnity. "Every life matters," he replied, echoing Emily's conviction. "Every voice deserves to be heard, every dream to be nurtured." The senator nodded, her eyes shining with shared determination. By mid-afternoon, the newly planted saplings formed a tender carpet of green around the estate's entrance. Their slender stems quivered in the breeze, leaning toward the sun like eager students in a lecture hall. The sight made John's heart swell. Here was literal growth born of collective action, a living testament to hope made flesh. Before the gathering dispersed, Anna and Samuel announced the creation of the Emily Whitaker Scholarship Fund, offering grants to young women pursuing social innovation projects. The inaugural recipients, a teacher developing literacy apps for migrant children and an engineer designing affordable water filters, were presented with certificates in hand, their futures brightened by Emily's enduring generosity. As shadows lengthened and the event wound down, John lingered amid the crowd, observing multiple generations mingling on the lawn, great-grandparents seated on benches watching toddlers play, teenagers swapping ideas for upcoming workshops, elderly couples sharing slices of freshly baked bread. A hush fell as Rosa rang a small handbell, signaling a collective moment of remembrance. Every voice stilled, and for a single breath, the ghosts of Whitaker forebears, Emily foremost among them, seemed to drift across the manicured grass, smiles of approval on their lips. Finally, cups of spiced hot chocolate and pans of warm honeyed bread circulated among the guests, each person accepting the simple comfort with gratitude. They stood in small clusters, sipping and munching, united by the sweetness of shared hope. As dusk painted the sky in lavender and rose, John took Anna's hand and placed Samuel's in his other. Together, they stood before the manor's facade, watching a lone cloud drift by like a silent promise. A gentle breeze stirred the ribbons of Emily's banner and carried the mingled scents of lilac, earth, and fresh bread to their senses. John drew in a steady breath and smiled. "This is what we built," he whispered. "A future rooted in love, reaching ever upward." Anna leaned into him, and Samuel pressed close, their three shadows entwining on the cobbled path. In that moment, under the soft sigh of the evening wind, they embodied Emily's greatest legacy, a place not merely preserved but alive, where every story, every invention, and every heartbeat would continue to shape the world for generations to come. A hushed darkness settled over the Whitaker manor the night before, as though the ancient walls themselves drew a slow, deliberate breath. The wind whispered through the narrow gaps in the shuttered windows, slipping into the corridors with a plaintive whistle that seemed almost alive. Each draft stirred the heavy curtains and rattled the leaded glass, as if testing the house's resolve to endure another dawn. John Whitaker ascended the attic stairs by candlelight, each footfall echoing on the worn wooden steps. He paused beneath the low beams, inhaling the familiar scent of dust and aged timber. Reaching behind an old armoire, he found Emily's chest of tools, a battered metal trunk secured with a rusted latch. With a sharp tug, he lifted the lid and revealed an array of hand-carved chisels, planes, and hammers, their steel heads mottled with oxidation and their wooden handles polished smooth by years of diligent use. He gingerly lifted a chisel, its cold, pitted blade contrasting vividly with the warm sheen of maple in its handle. The cool metal stung his fingertips, a reminder that even the strongest steels soften when left dormant too long. Next, he ran his hand over a block plane, its brass cap gleaming faintly beneath a thin veil of rust. Holding those tools, he felt Emily's presence stirring in the rafters, urging him onward. By first light, John had set the tools in the foyer, where Samuel and Anna waited in quiet anticipation. The children's eyes, the same bright green and warm brown that had carried hope through every trial, shone with determination as they gathered around their grandfather. Together, they unrolled a weathered blueprint of the manor's front veranda, its columns of stone in need of repair and its railings worn by decades of neglect. Anna's pencil traced a new balustrade design, elegant curves reminiscent of vines climbing toward the sky, while Samuel plotted the placement of climbing rose bushes along the base of each post. They debated the angle of each step, the width of each plank, and the placement of benches under the wide eaves. Their whispered collaboration felt like a sacred rite, a generational passing of the torch of creation. When plans were laid, Clara appeared with 3 steaming bowls of thick oatmeal porridge. Cinnamon and nutmeg swirled atop the creamy surface, and wisps of steam curled upward like tiny clouds. They sat together at the long dining table, grandfather, grandchildren, and mentor, each spoonful a ritual echoing winter mornings of the past. The warmth seeped into their bones, a comforting anchor against the chill of early spring. That afternoon, Maria arrived, a volunteer architect with keen eyes and a heart full of wonder. She stepped through the main doors in a tailored field coat, her sketches and measuring tools tucked beneath her arm. As John led her through the courtyard, she studied the manor's facade with reverence. Then she unfurled her own drawings, a contemplative garden designed around the veranda, with circular stone paths, flowering pergolas, and a central reflecting pool. She pointed to areas where lavender and rosemary would mingle with Emily's roses, creating a sensory tapestry of fragrance and color. But as the family and volunteers examined Maria's vision, the whisper of concern grew. The cost of stonework, of handcrafted iron brackets, of rare heirloom rose cultivars loomed like thunderclouds. John's heart tightened at the price tags scrawled in Maria's neat handwriting. He bowed his head, troubled. How could they afford such artistry? Rosa appeared then, her silver hair catching the sun as she approached with a small sack of coins, the savings she had tucked away for years. "Use this," she said, pressing the offerings into John's hand, her eyes shining. "Plant the seeds of hope. I'll wait for new flowers to bloom." John's voice caught as he embraced her, gratitude mingling with the weight of her sacrifice. "Thank you," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Your love is the truest currency." That evening, as the sun dipped low, the manor's aged stone walls glowed in hues of burnt orange and rose. Shadows pooled in the corners where paint peeled from cornices, and the last light of day pooled at the feet of the great columns. Anna and Clara walked out onto the veranda and began rehearsing a small recital, Anna's clear soprano weaving through Clara's measured piano accompaniment. Their music would inaugurate the garden's unveiling, promising to stir the souls of every guest. Meanwhile, Dr. Miguel moved among local suppliers, negotiating vigorously for discounts on lumber, ironwork, and landscaping stone. His steady diplomacy yielded generous pledges, a millwright willing to donate reclaimed beams, a blacksmith crafting decorative brackets at cost, a stonemason offering leftover flagstone from a neighboring restoration project. As each promise materialized, John felt the knot in his chest loosen, replaced by a cautious optimism. Night fell as volunteers gathered beneath the veranda's eaves for a final ritual, the placement of solar lanterns along the edges of newly mulched beds. Each battery-powered lamp was set into the soil with reverent care, its translucent panels promising gentle illumination come fate of darkness. As they worked, the manor exhaled, its walls softened by cooperative voices, its structure reinforced by collective effort. At the edge of the veranda, Samuel knelt on a scrap of plywood, his sketchbook open. He meticulously recorded every step of the transformation. Diagrams of beam reinforcements, cross-sections of planter boxes, the sequence of laying down new decking. He labeled each sketch in neat script and shaded areas where paint would shimmer in the morning light. For him, the record was more than a plan. It was a living chronicle of their shared endeavor. Yet as the night air cooled, John felt a familiar tremor of fear. What if the veranda collapsed? What if the loans and donations dried up? He pictured the fractured boards and failing railings, remembered the humiliations of past failures. Doubt crept in like a cold draft, and he wrapped his arms around himself, shivering. Then in his mind, he heard Emily's voice whisper, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." Her words, soft yet insistent, steadied his shaking spirit. He remembered her late-night workshop sessions, her hands steady at the lathe even as the machinery groaned. If she could press on through every storm, so can I, he resolved. At dawn's first light, the veranda showed signs of life. Fresh cedar boards gleamed where once splintered planks lay, and the new railings curved gracefully beneath columns newly wrapped in climbing rose vines. Among the mulch, tender green shoots, primed by Rosa's seeds, broke the surface, vertical promises of summer bloom. John, Anna, and Samuel stepped onto the veranda, breathing in the gentle fragrance of earth and wood. Above, the sky was pale and cloudless, a silent witness to their triumph. Anna's gaze swept over the newly laid garden, her face alight with wonder. Samuel reached out, touching the first bud on a rose shoot, marveling at its delicate grip on life. They paused, hands clasped, 3 generations tethered by love and labor, contemplating the dawn of renewal they had built together. In that moment, the manor exhaled its own sigh of relief, its walls warmed by sunlight and human devotion. And as the breeze stirred the curtains and rustled the young leaves, the Whitaker family bowed their heads in quiet gratitude, ready to welcome the world to their transformed haven, proof that hope, when nurtured by courageous hearts, unfurls like the first tender leaf under spring's embracing wind. A leaden dawn seeped through the windows of the Whitaker manor, staining the worn velvet drapes in shades of pewter and steel. John Whitaker sat at the grand mahogany desk, fingers wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, when the knock came at the front door. With heavy steps, he answered, to find Rosa holding a crisp, official-looking envelope. Her face, usually a fountain of gentle encouragement, was edged with concern. John slit the seal. The paper crackled ominously, an urgent summons from Crestwood Developments, a lawsuit demanding immediate cessation of all restoration work and threatening legal fees so steep they could drown their entire effort. His chest tightened as he read the words aloud, notice of intent to seek injunction and embargo under Section 42B. Dr. Miguel, who had arrived unexpected but timely that morning to review progress on the new wing, joined them in the library. He flattened his glasses on his nose, scanned the summons, then turned to John with grave resolve. "They've filed for an injunction," he said, voice low but steady. "We must respond within 10 days or face a court order to halt all work and possibly pay damages. First, we file a motion to dismiss. Then, gather evidence of historic and social value to counter their claims." John nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The threat of a work stoppage loomed like an unlit guillotine. He remembered Emily's fierce belief that a home was more than bricks and mortar. It was memory, community, hope. To lose this fight would mean betraying her legacy. Clara arrived moments later, bearing a tray of chocolate-laden mugs, the steam curling upward in cozy spirals. "For courage," she declared, handing each of them a rich, velvety cup. They gathered in a tight circle in front of the fireplace, sipping the sweet warmth as if drawing strength from every sip. The chocolate's bittersweet comfort helped banish a fraction of the dread that shadowed their hearts. Anna, her brow furrowed with determination beyond her 8 years, retrieved color markers and poster board. She and Samuel set to work in the parlor, sketching bold letters that read, "Let the dream live on," beneath a heart-shaped emblem entwined with rose vines. The scent of fresh marker, ink mingled with the tang of chocolate, forming a heady reminder that creativity and defiance often grew from the same soil. As twilight approached, a van bearing the emblem of Crestwood University rumbled up the drive, disgorging a group of law and urban planning students galvanized by the story of the manor's revival. They entered with brisk efficiency, briefcases in hand, offering to draft briefs, canvass neighbors for statements, and coordinate logistics. Their youthful enthusiasm was infectious. Maria, the volunteer architect, exclaimed, "With this legal army, we have a fighting chance." John led them into the great hall, where he spread the injunction papers across a long oak table. The texture of the documents surprised him. Thick bond paper that crunched like autumn leaves under his fingertips, ink still barely dry. He inhaled deeply, tasting the acrid tang of bureaucracy. "We will show them this house is worth more than a parking lot," he vowed. Samuel stood on a stack of reference books to address the group. With his solemn 9-year-old voice, he recited a passage from one of Emily's letters. "When the world says no, we must answer with what we can build together." The students exchanged glances of respect. Clara dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, proud of the boy's steadiness. That evening, John paced under the high ceilings of the parlor, wrestling with his own fears. "We are fighting for more than walls," he thought. "We are fighting for dreams, hers, ours, the community's." He paused before an ornate mirror in its gilded frame and whispered to his reflection, "To fight for a dream is to fight for those we love." The next morning, they convened at the Crestwood Municipal Building for an emergency hearing. The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair and unflinching eyes, sat beneath the city seal. Engineers from Crestwood Developments sat stiffly at one table, ready to testify about alleged structural dangers. Across the aisle, John, Dr. Miguel, Anna, Samuel, Clara, Rosa, Maria, and the student volunteers stood as an unorthodox but united front. Dr. Miguel opened with a fierce plea. "Your Honor, this manor is more than a structure. It is the repository of countless acts of generosity, education, and community building. We submit evidence, photographs of workshops, letters of thanks, and records of volunteer hours to demonstrate its inestimable social value." He handed the judge a thick binder of testimonials and historical reports. Rosa rose to testify next, voice quavering but clear. She described decades of Emily's quiet philanthropy, free tutoring sessions in the drawing room, holiday meals served to the needy, concerts in the courtyard that lifted spirits through hard winters. The judge leaned forward, scribbling notes as Rosa's words painted vivid scenes of warmth and compassion. The tension escalated as the developer's engineers countered with cold metrics, traffic studies, cost estimates for remediation, projected property values. They attempted to dismiss the emotional testimony as anecdotal fluff, urging the court to consider only economic reality. At that moment, Thomas Granger, an unlikely ally, stepped forward. He was the city's chief structural engineer, a man known for his pragmatic approach to public works. Clearing his throat, he declared, "I inspected the manor last week at the city's request. Yes, certain beams need reinforcement, but the structure is fundamentally sound. With modest, safe procedures, restoration can proceed without hazard." His brief but unequivocal endorsement silenced the developer's side and stirred a ripple of relieved murmurs among the community's supporters. As the hearing neared its climax, Dr. Miguel requested a moment to produce a symbolic gesture of hope. He directed each supporter to light a single candle from a small candelabrum at the front of the courtroom. Anna, Samuel, Clara, Rosa, Maria, and even several of the student volunteers knelt to light their yellow candles, the color Emily had always adored. The pale flames danced against the judge's bench, casting long, hopeful shadows that seemed to reach toward the heavens. Outside the courtroom window, a solitary red cardinal alighted on the sill, its bright plumage a striking contrast to the gray stone. It cocked its head, observing the proceedings with dark, intelligent eyes, as though embodying Emily's restless spirit and watchful care. After a tense final pause, the judge cleared her throat. In light of the evidence presented, the social and historical significance, the expert assessment of structural integrity, and the palpable community support, this court will deny Crestwood Development's injunction request. The Whitaker Manor is hereby recognized as a protected community heritage site, with restoration permitted to continue under appropriate safety oversight. A collective exhalation, one long, joyous breath, swept through the assembled group. John felt tears of relief sting his cheeks as applause and cheers rang out, echoing against the high-domed ceiling like a burst of triumphant bells. The developers looked stunned. One representative stepped forward hesitantly and offered a handshake. John shook it, seeing in that gesture a quiet admission. This fight had transcended profit. Back at the manor's front lawn, in celebration, and as a symbol of their enduring struggle, John, Anna, and Samuel knelt together. With the judge's proclamation fresh in their hearts, John held a small sapling, a young oak, its roots swaddled in rich earth. Samuel gently pressed the roots into the moist ground, and Anna cradled the sapling's slender trunk as John filled the hole with dirt. Each handful of soil felt like a promise fulfilled, each pat a benediction of resilience. When the last shovelful was settled, John leaned close to whisper to his grandchildren, "This tree will grow as our dreams do, steadily against all odds." Anna and Samuel nodded, their eyes shining with the certainty that love and community could triumph over adversity. As twilight painted the sky in lavender hues, the three of them stepped back to admire their work. The young oak's slender branches lifting toward the heavens, a living monument to dreams defended. Behind them, the manor's lights glowed softly, a beacon to all who dared to fight for the right to dream. A gentle sun bathed the newly unveiled garden in a soft, golden glow, setting the carved wooden benches aflame with warmth. Each bench, expertly hewn by Alcindo's skilled hands, bore intricate rose motifs, an homage to Emily's love of flowers, and nestled among aromatic lavender and bright marigold blooms. The air was redolent with promise, as if every petal and board had awakened to share its story. Clara moved among the clustered tables beneath a canopy of climbing vines, orchestrating the first workshop of the day, photographs and family histories. She laid out weathered albums, leather-bound, their pages yellowed and frayed, each bursting with black and white portraits of Whitaker family gatherings, Emily's childhood tea parties, and Samuel's first tentative smiles. Volunteers helped visitors gently turn pages, revealing the collective memory of generations. Clara's voice, firm yet warm, guided them. Choose a photo that speaks to you, then capture the story it tells. Nearby, Anna distributed stacks of brightly colored notes and pens. Write down your favorite memory of this place, she urged. No one else will read it unless you wish. Guests paused thoughtfully, dipping pens into pastel inks. One by one, they scrawled cherished recollections, playing hide and seek with my grandmother in the conservatory, my first dance under Emily's chandelier, the day we saved the manor together. These notes fluttered across the central table like a profusion of blossoms, bright pinks, yellows, and mint greens cascading in gentle disorder, each a petal of memory. Samuel stood on tiptoe and read the first aloud. I remember Emily teaching us to bake bread when the world outside seemed dark. His clear voice carried across the garden, trembling with emotion. As he recited each snippet, faces in the crowd glowed with recognition and tears. Murmurs of solidarity rose. strangers discovering shared bonds, neighbors remembering simple acts of kindness commissioned by Emily's gentle will. At the wrought iron gazebo, an improvised bandstand draped with ribbons, Anna beckoned a circle of silver-haired residents to take up their instruments. A violin, a dulcimer, an accordion, and a battered guitar emerged in wrinkled hands. With the soft strumming of guitar and the mellow drone of accordion, the first chords filled the afternoon air. Laughter bubbled among the musicians, and within moments the gazebo erupted in a gentle waltz, its lilting rhythm coaxing foot taps and whispered hums from the gathering crowd. Yet amid the warmth bloomed a chill of dissent. A cluster of onlookers shook their heads, their voices carrying a sotto voce critique. "It's all too saccharine, romantic fluff," they muttered. John, overhearing, straightened and stepped forward. His voice rang clear. "Emotion is the force that moves the world. Without it, we are nothing but hollow shells." His words, deep with conviction, silenced his detractors as quickly as a clap of thunder. He swept a hand over the gazebo. Emily always blended science and art. She knew that invention must be guided by heart. At his side, Maria the architect nodded, recalling Emily's hydroponic experiments set to classical sonatas. Tradition and innovation, he reminded them, were threads of the same tapestry. Before long, a bus of school children clattered through the gates, notebooks in hand. Their teacher, inspired by the morning's workshop, had arranged a field trip for an art and history project. Wide-eyed, they flipped through the photo albums, listened to Samuel's readings, and sketched the benches in vivid watercolors. Their youthful energy rippled through the garden like sunlight refracted on dewdrops. As the late afternoon wore on, Clara set out platters of Emily's favorite treats: warm cinnamon rolls, nutmeg spice scones, and golden honey cornbread. The fragrance of cinnamon and nutmeg curled around each visitor like an embrace, blending with the earthy perfume of lavender and rosemary in the garden beds. Hands reached eagerly for a sweet morsel, sharing smiles and nods of approval as they savored recipes passed down through Emily's own kitchen. Clara then read aloud a fragment from one of Emily's letters. "Joy resides in the small moments, shared laughter, freshly baked bread, a tender melody in the dusk. Cherish them, for they are the strands that bind our lives." The guests closed their eyes, leaning into the resonance of those words as if tasting them on their tongues. With the sun tilting low, Anna and Samuel gathered the crowd for a momentous announcement. "Today we declare this the first annual Living Memory Day." Their voices rang together, a harmonious echo of childhood promise. Applause exploded like a jubilant wave, rippling through the plants and benches alike. Just as the day seemed to reach its zenith, a flicker of movement appeared on a nearby smartphone screen. A live video feed of Emily's ghostly grandson, a distant relation never before seen, began to speak. His voice, soft with emotion, recounted how Emily's kindness had saved his own family from hardship. He spoke of receiving her repaired water filter decades ago and how that act had set his family on a path to education and stability. Tears sparkled in the listeners' eyes as they watched the video, feeling the full arc of Emily's impact span generations and geographies. Dr. Miguel wasted no time. He had already prepared a formal proclamation and presented it to the mayor that afternoon. Now he announced to the gathering that Living Memory Day would be recognized officially by the city. The mayor's signature on the document, he declared triumphantly, would secure the day's place in the municipal calendar for years to come. As twilight gathered its violet shades across the sky, the final ritual commenced. Each guest, offered one last colorful note card, paused before the central memory table to inscribe a last thought. One by one, they wrote, laid their pens to rest, and placed the notes among the shifting petals. The final message, penned by a gentle matron with calloused but loving hands, read, "Tomorrow depends on the memory of yesterday." John stepped back to take it all in, the crowd of young and old, the fluttering notes like petals in endless bloom, the benches bearing witness to human connection. His heart swelled with gratitude. With Anna and Samuel at his side, he led them to one of those carved wood benches. The three of them sat, shoulders touching, gazing out at the garden alive with stories. Above, the sky blushed with the final embers of sunset. Light and shadow danced across the blooms and benches. In the fading glow, grandfather and grandchildren shared a moment of profound peace. The world felt balanced on a hinge of memory and renewal, proof that, in motion, memories could inspire the future. And there, whispering against the evening breeze, the echoes of Emily's laugh seemed to drift among the petals and benches, a reminder that every story carried the power to blossom anew. A cool spring dawn slipped through the curtains of the Whitaker Manor's guest bedroom, painting the walls in soft pastel hues. Anna rose early, drawn from sleep by an inexplicable tug in her chest. She slipped on her slippers and wandered toward the study, where a small metal object glinted on the edge of Emily's writing desk. Kneeling, Anna picked it up and gasped, a slender blade of polished steel, no more than 6 inches long, its surface cool and weighty in her palm. Along one side, delicately engraved, were the initials EW 1998. Anna traced the engraving with her fingertip, feeling the minuscule grooves beneath her skin. The blade's edge was blunt, clearly intended for slicing paper or thin leather, but its craftsmanship spoke of precision and care. She tucked the artifact into her pocket and hurried to fetch her grandfather, heart pounding with both excitement and trepidation. John Whitaker, bleary-eyed in his robe, rubbed his temples as Anna laid the blade before him. The sight stirred a distant memory. Months ago, he had glimpsed a similar metal strip tucked within a battered wooden box in the attic, alongside Emily's faded sketchbooks and prototype notes. But until now, he had dismissed it as another relic without context. Clara, summoned by Anna's triumphant call, adjusted her spectacles and leaned in for a closer look. "This is no mere trinket," she whispered, brow furrowed. "I suspect there's more to this than meets the eye." Emily was nothing if not meticulous. "I think we should inspect the hidden laboratory beneath the manor." A shared glance passed between John and Anna, equal parts dread and exhilaration. Without hesitation, Clara retrieved 3 brass lanterns from a shelf, the fuel reservoirs gleaming in the lamplight. Together, they climbed the narrow stairs to the back vestibule, where a trapdoor concealed the descent to the basement. By candlelight, they pried it open and stepped onto the steep, stone stairs that groaned with age. The air below was cool and heavy, saturated with the scent of damp earth and rusted metal. Dust motes drifted in the lantern beams, dancing like silent sentinels in the gloom. John's footsteps echoed against rough-hewn walls as they reached the bottom, revealing a low-ceilinged chamber lined with workbenches and shelves sagging under the weight of glass jars and mechanical parts. Samuel, drawn by his grandmother's tradition of curiosity, had joined them unannounced. He pressed forward and discovered a small iron lockbox tucked beneath a battered oak table. Its front panel bore a numeric dial, the digits worn by time. The box's lock refused to budge, the combination unknown. Anna's eyes lit up as she recalled a phrase Emily had written in one of her private letters: "The secret lies in the number of roses in the garden." Her heart raced. She led John and Samuel back upstairs in a flurry, lanterns bobbing in the dim stairwell. Outside, dew still clung to petals, cool under their fingers. Methodically, they counted 17 red hybrid tea bushes, 9 climbing roses, and 4 patchwork wild rose shrubs, totaling 30. John re-entered the basement trembling with anticipation. He dialed 3 to 0 on the lock's wheel twice, expecting relief. Instead, he dialed a third sequence, 303, aligned with the pattern of rose petals in Emily's last garden row. The box clicked and the lid sprang open with a sudden creak. Inside lay a prototype, a compact device of interlocking gears and tiny speakers, its metal casing engraved with Emily's trademark rose and cog emblem. The arrangement suggested a community broadcast unit meant to transmit voices across the manor's wings and beyond. A coil of fine copper wire, a cylinder of mica diaphragms, and a bundle of delicate tuning springs nestled around the central mechanism. Anna lifted the assemblage gingerly. She called it the Heartlink, she murmured, remembering a faded blueprint sketched in Emily's journal. The unit speakers, no larger than silver thimbles, perched like watchful owls at each corner. Beneath them, micro-gears of brass shimmered, their interstices fine enough to hide secrets in plain sight. Yet, as John examined the device, his face fell. Several critical components were missing: tiny brass solder rings and a precise mica diaphragm cracked by age. Emily's invention, brilliant though it was, lay unfinished and silent, a promise pausing on the brink of realization. John's voice trembled as he spoke aloud. Emily always dreamed of connecting people beyond these walls. She wanted neighbors, near and far, to hear each other's voices in real time. The weight of her unfulfilled ambition settled upon him. Clara, ever resourceful, brightened. We have access to the Cultural Center's 3D printer. If we can model the missing parts, we can recreate them exactly. She fetched her laptop and began drafting CAD files based on Emily's rough sketches. Maria, the volunteer architect, joined them, her keen eye ensuring every dimension matched the original design. As word spread, a squad of engineering students from the local university appeared in the basement doorway, rucksacks slung over shoulders. Their professor had caught wind of the discovery and called for volunteers. Now, in the flickering lantern light, they set to work, measuring the missing rings with calipers, scanning the gear teeth with a portable 3D scanner, and debating the proper thickness of the mica diaphragms. Samuel and Anna hovered at the edges of the workbenches, enthralled by the flurry of scientific activity. When the first set of 3D printed rings emerged, smooth and bronze-colored, the children cheered. They lined up beneath Clara's supervision and, one by one, tested each ring in its groove. With each perfect fit came a chorus of laughter that lit the cavernous room brighter than any lantern. But innovation is never without hiccup. As the final portion of the prototype clicked into place, John wound the central spring and flicked the power switch. A sudden snap cracked through the silence, the mechanism stuttering and then grinding to a halt. A thin wisp of smoke curled from the speaker housing. Rosa, summoned by the students' initial excitement, hurried down the stairs. She surveyed the contraption, brow furrowed, then placed a gentle hand on John's arm. "Every failure is but a step toward success," she said, her voice calm and resolute. "Your grandmother believed that in every mistake lies the seed of progress." Heartened by her faith, John and the students adjusted the wiring, replaced a splintered tuning spring, and reinforced the solder joints. Clara recalibrated the voltage regulator on her laptop, while Anna wound the spring with deliberate care. Outside, raindrops tapped against the basement window panes like expectant drumbeats. At last, John signaled for silence. He activated the device a second time. The gears whirred, the copper coils hummed, and a soft blue indicator light glowed at the unit's heart. Slowly, the speakers crackled to life and emitted a clear, warm tone, a resonance that felt like a heartbeat. Anna held the microphone attachment, another of Emily's innovations, and spoke softly into it. "Hello, this is Anna Whitaker, reading a message from Emily. May these voices bring us closer and remind us that no heart stands alone." Across the room, the speakers reproduced her words in gentle clarity, as if Emily herself spoke from beyond the years. Tears pricked everyone's eyes: students, volunteers, John, Clara, Rosa, each moved by the tangible bridge built between past and present. In that hallowed hush, the basement felt alight with promise. Emily's dream, carried in polished gears and copper wires, had transcended time's silence. The Heartlink's first transmission was not merely a mechanical achievement, but a profound affirmation that love, memory, and ingenuity could unite voices across generations. As the final echoes faded, John swept the children into a tight embrace. Anna's head rested against his chest, her voice thick with emotion. Samuel's hand found Clara's, their faces shining with tears of joy. In the soft glow of the lanterns, they lingered, allowing the moment to settle into their bones. Outside, the rain ceased, and a single ray of sunlight pierced the gloom, highlighting the guardian of Emily's legacy, an intricate device born of hope and now humming with life. And in that transformative revelation, the Whitaker family, and everyone who had joined them, stood committed to keeping Emily's heartbeat alive, one message at a time. A brilliant sun flooded the Whitaker Manor's grand hall, where the freshly restored marble floor gleamed beneath a canopy of stained glass windows. At the center of the room stood the communicom, Emily's once-forgotten communication device, now refined and reborn. Its compact speakers and polished casing reflected shards of morning light like tiny beacons. Volunteers bustled around it, securing the final cables and adjusting the adjustable brass antennae, each screw turned carrying the weight of collective dreams. By mid-morning, a hush fell over the assembled crowd, neighbors, local officials, students, and artisans, all drawn by the promise of a new era. John Whitaker stepped forward and tapped the device's control panel with reverent authority. Immediately, a crisp, clear tone rang out, echoing off the vaulted ceilings and stone walls. It was a clean, pure sound, free of distortion and static, imbuing the hall with a sense of wonder. Gasps of delight coursed through the audience as the echoes faded into silence. Clara distributed hand-carved wooden tokens to each participant, tiny badges stamped with a rose and gear symbol, signifying membership in this bold experiment. Then John raised his voice. Today, we inaugurate the Communicom, our community message network, a tool to unite hearts and voices across every street and hamlet. With that, he summoned his granddaughter, Anna, to send the very first message. Anna, her dark braids catching the light, approached the microphone. She inhaled deeply and her voice filled the room. This is Anna Whitaker calling all friends and neighbors to our Next Justice and Solidarity workshop this Friday at 3 o'clock. Let us gather to learn, to speak, and to act together. Instantly, the soft hum of distant speakers crackled to life in side rooms and the courtyard beyond. Across the manor grounds, villagers and volunteers scribbled Anna's words in green notebooks, point one of the Communicom's emerging legacy. Nearby, Samuel manned the message station, a polished oak desk piled with blank note cards. Voices arrived, a neighbor in Maple Lane requesting a visit, an elderly couple in Cedar Alley offering to bake bread for the workshop, a teacher from the next town asking for support materials. Samuel's quick pencil recorded each request, his bright green-flecked eyes scanning the messages with careful attention. He pinned each card to a large corkboard labeled Community Bulletin, transforming the hall into a living tapestry of voices. But the early broadcasts weren't flawless. A sudden burst of static crackled through the speakers, and a distorted echo of Anna's voice played back several seconds late. Volunteer technicians scrambled to reposition the makeshift antennae on the roof, their hands fumbling coax connectors and retuning the device's alignment. Frustration flashed across their faces, then determination settled in as they labored to coax clarity from the first-generation system. Dr. Miguel strode onto the balcony overlooking the hall and placed a call to the city council. He negotiated permission to install signal repeaters on the water tower and at the fire station in the next town to ensure the Communicom could bridge every valley and ridge in the county. By midday, formal approvals filtered in by courier, email, and phone, an official green light that unlocked the network's true potential. In the kitchen, Clara oversaw a tray of freshly baked lemon drizzle and chocolate chip scones. The warm aroma curled through the corridors, drawing volunteers to pause for brief respites. She offered each technician and helper a cup of mint tea and a slice of crisp, tender pastry. "Nourishment for body and spirit," she said, smiling as greasy tools and soldering irons were set aside in favor of sweet comfort. John, watching his community rally around this invention, reflected quietly, "Connecting hearts is the greatest invention of all." He ran a hand over the device's polished surface, imagining the countless voices it would carry, stories of triumph, calls for help, songs of celebration. Word spread beyond Whitaker Manor's stone walls. By mid-afternoon, delegations from neighboring towns arrived, caravans of bicycles and cars streaming down the long drive. Leaders of community centers, church groups and youth clubs stepped through the gates, eager to witness the Communicom in action. They toured the hall, examining the carved consoles and wiring, nodding appreciatively and exchanging ideas for regional adoption. Among them was Mayor Althea Ramirez of Briarfield, a vibrant woman known for championing civic innovations. She approached John with tears in her eyes. "This is more than technology," she said, voice trembling. "It's hope made audible." John clasped her hand and replied, "Every life matters. Every voice deserves to be heard." The two embraced, forging a partnership to replicate the Communicom model across the county. Festive banners unfurled along the hall's arches, announcing the Active Citizen program, weekly gatherings broadcast through the Communicom, covering topics from recycling initiatives to neighborhood watch coordination. Volunteers pinned the bright posters to walls, their colors popping against the pale stone. A moment of youthful pride arose when Anna received a handwritten letter from a 10-year-old in Pinewood Grove who wrote, "I discover my passion for sharing stories thanks to your family's broadcasts. I want to be a journalist now." Anna's eyes glowed as she accepted the letter, promising to mentor the aspiring writer through the Communicom story segment. Meanwhile, Samuel oversaw tablet distribution to elderly residents living in the manor's adjacent cottages. He connected each device to the Communicom network, instructing his grandparents' generation on how to listen for morning announcements and leave voice messages in return. Laughter erupted as an octogenarian punched numbers into the touch screen, marveling at the device that carried her neighbors' greetings directly into her living room. As dusk approached, the hall's lighting dimmed to a gentle glow. Clara announced a special goodnight message campaign. Residents could record short, comforting phrases to be broadcast at quiet hours. "Rest well. We are with you. Tomorrow is bright." The first wave of messages, soft lullabies and whispered well wishes, drifted through the hall, wrapping the audience in a collective embrace. Yet amid the triumph, John felt a pang of longing for Emily. Everywhere he looked, faces lit by screen glow, voices crackling through speakers. He yearned for her gentle presence. His heart twinged with both pride and a tender ache. She should be here to see this. He closed his eyes and pictured her smile, the soft glint in her hazel eyes as she watched her inventions spring to life. Anna slipped to his side and gently clasped his hand. "She's here," Anna whispered, "in every voice we hear." A small hush settled over him, as though Emily's spirit had whispered along the wires, comforting him. Then the moment came. The National Broadcasting Union, having heard of the Communicom's success, issued an official proclamation adopting the system as the national model for community integration. A formal certificate, signed by the Minister of Culture, arrived by courier and was read aloud by Dr. Miguel. The hall erupted in tears and cheers, volunteers hugging and clapping as fireworks, simulated by lanterns projected onto the roof, painted the night sky with dancing colors. Above, electric lanterns swayed from eaves, casting warm pools of light across the courtyard. The festival atmosphere pulsed with music and laughter, but underneath it all was the hum of a network that no longer belonged to one house or one family. It belonged to every heart linked by message and melody. As the celebration wound down, the crowd gathered one final time before the manor's glowing facade. John, Anna, and Samuel stood hand in hand. Gasps rose as the lantern display coalesced into the shape of a rose, its petals unfurling in midair like a slow-motion dream. The community's faces, illuminated by soft light, were turned upward in shared wonder. John raised Anna's hand, then Samuel's, holding both aloft. To Emily he called into the night, and to the voices that carry her legacy forward. A dozen lanterns drifted upward and vanished into the midnight sky, as though the stars themselves had recognized the call. And there, in the hush that followed, the Communicom's gentle beacon continued its work, binding hearts, amplifying whispers of hope, and heralding the final act of a story woven together by dreams, courage, and the unbreakable thread of human connection. A serene morning dawned over the Whitaker Manor, its stately facade draped in banners of rich burgundy and gold bearing the word gratitude. Each flag fluttered in the gentle breeze, the sunlight filtering through their fabric to cast warm patterns across the ivy-clad stone. Dew sparkled on the lawn's blades of grass like a scattering of diamonds, and the air was suffused with the delicate perfume of roses blooming in front of the veranda, each blossom a living testament to the dreams Emily had planted. Inside the grand hall, Anna Whitaker presided over the final preparations. Invitations, adorned with Emily's beloved rose and cog emblem, had been dispatched to every member of the municipal council, summoning them to celebrate the inaugural Living Memory Day. The official scrolls lay on an antique oak table, tied with silk ribbons. Anna smoothed each one with care, ensuring the wax seals, pressed with Emily's initials, were perfect. Soon, a colorful cortege formed on the lawn. Children twirled in bright dresses and button-down shirts, their hair crowned with daisy chains. Elderly neighbors, their faces lined by time and trials, pinned single rosebuds to their lapels. Volunteers arrived bearing baskets of wildflower petals, which they tucked into the collars of every guest. At the head of the procession, Anna led the way with Samuel at her side, his small frame squared with proud purpose. They moved in slow, deliberate procession toward the manor's entrance, the sun illuminating their path like a sacred spotlight. To everyone's modest astonishment, representatives of Whitaker National Bank and Crestwood Developments, once bitter adversaries, marched arm in arm with the procession. Dressed in dark suits and polished shoes, they carried an air of humility. At the front strode James Bellinger, the bank's stoic executive who had once threatened to foreclose on the estate. In his hands, he held a delicate crown of blush-pink roses, bound with a velvet ribbon of deep wine. Bellinger's every step seemed to carry the weight of penance. As the procession halted at the veranda's foot, John stepped forward to greet him. Bellinger bowed his head and extended the rose crown. "Mr. Whitaker," he began, voice unsteady but sincere, "I bring this as a token of my regret and hope for reconciliation." John accepted the crown with both hands, feeling the softness of the petals against his palms. The rose's velvet petals brushed his fingertips like whispered apologies, and the faint, honeyed scent swirled around them, carrying promises of peace. In the hushed stillness, Samuel stood on a low stone plinth and unfurled a yellowed sheet of parchment, one of Emily's handwritten letters. His voice, clear and unwavering, rang out across the courtyard. To those who doubt the power of forgiveness, remember that no dream thrives in soil poisoned by resentment. Let mercy be the seed from which we grow together. As he finished reading, he folded the letter carefully and placed it into a wooden box etched with Emily's rose motif. Then, in a single sweeping gesture, he opened the box and scattered rose petals onto Bellinger's outstretched hands, symbolizing the absolution Emily herself would have offered. A hush fell. Then, from the crowd, Rosa moved forward, her shawl trailing like a comet's tail. She embraced the Crestwood executive, her aged arms wrapping him in a gesture so profound that even the most cynical witnesses were moved to tears. The transformation was palpable, a hard-nosed financier softened by the simple grace of human kindness. Next came the ritual of communal cake. Volunteers rolled out tablecloths from hand-woven flax and arranged long platters bearing slices of Emily's signature marble cake. Each piece bore swirls of chocolate and vanilla in celebration of life's wondrous contrasts. With reverent smiles, the assembled guests accepted their slices, forks poised, to taste the sweetness that had once sustained Emily's own moments of joy. As they ate, quiet laughter and shared anecdotes of Emily's kindness rippled through the crowd, a chorus of gratitude rising with the yeasty aroma of warm cake. John paused, savoring the moment and reflecting on Emily's own words, "Forgiveness is the gift we give ourselves." He lifted his voice over the hum of conversation. "Today, let us remember that reconciliation is the true path to justice, that through mercy, we build unity stronger than any contract or decree." At that moment, a caravan of local artists arrived, each carrying canvases and paintbrushes. They had come to propose a series of murals chronicling the manor's storied journey, from Emily's early experiments to the community's dramatic rescue. Their leader, a tall woman with a mane of curly silver hair, unrolled her sketch, Emily dancing amid a swirl of gears and petals, mechanical ingenuity entwined with floral grace. An obstacle arose. The manor's western wall bore an ugly scar of vandalism, a series of graffiti tags left by anonymous late-night interlopers. But the artists were undeterred. Under the direction of Clarice, Rosa's granddaughter and a talented muralist herself, neighbors young and old gathered to transform the defaced stones. Children dipped brushes into pots of cerulean and rose-red paint, while elders guided their strokes. Layer by layer, a vibrant tableau emerged, Emily's figure twirling in a swirl of mechanical grace, rose vines spiraling into cogwheels, gears blossoming like flowers in the sunlight. John and Clarice stood side by side, observing the mural come to life. Clarice's voice was soft with wonder. Art heals what words cannot. John nodded, tears shimmering in his eyes, and it binds us together in a story that none can erase. As the final tendrils of paint were brushed on, the mayor of Cresswell, the same official who once doubted the manor's worth, approached the microphone. His voice shook with emotion as he proclaimed, in recognition of the Whitaker Center's extraordinary service to community, this manor and its programs shall become the national exemplar for living cultural heritage. Applause thundered across the courtyard, cheers mingling with the flapping of the gratitude banners above. Samuel returned to the pewter gray Steinway parked near the veranda, its keys gleaming in the golden light. He seated himself and struck the first notes of Emily's waltz, soft, graceful, and resilient. The melody wove among the guests like a silken ribbon, each chord evoking memories of Emily's gentle laughter and quiet strength. Head swayed, eyes closed, and time seemed to pause in reverent homage. When Samuel's final chord faded, Anna stepped to the lectern and recited the closing lines of Emily's last letter. Be lighthouses to one another. Shine so bright that even the darkest night cannot dim our shared humanity. A collective breath was held and then released in a wave of applause that rippled across the gardens. The crowd stood united, children and elders, former adversaries and new friends, all bound by the resilient thread of Emily's dream. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the mural in hues of amber and rose, John, Anna, and Samuel clasped hands at the heart of the gathering. Surrounding them, the community formed a living circle, their faces luminous with hope. Together, they looked upon the mural, a vibrant testament to forgiveness, unity, and the unbreakable power of memory. In that transcendent hour, the Whitaker Manor stood not merely as an architectural relic, but as a living, breathing organism, its walls echoing with laughter, its halls humming with innovation, and its gardens blossoming with reconciliation. For in the end, justice was not served by judgment alone, but by the boundless grace of forgiveness that Emily Whitaker had sown, and that her family and community had nurtured into a legacy forever in motion. John Whitaker woke before the sun, his breath misting in the cool pre-dawn air as he stepped barefoot onto the dew-kissed grass of the rose garden. Around him, the world felt poised on the cusp of possibility, each petal, each blade of grass tinged silver by the lingering moonlight. He inhaled deeply, the crisp scent of earth and blooming buddleia filling his lungs, and felt his heart steady with quiet resolve. As he turned toward the manor's wide north wing, he noticed a faint bulge in the inner pocket of his old wool coat, the one Emily had gifted him on their 10th wedding anniversary. Reaching inside, he withdrew a folded slip of paper edged in soft sepia. The paper was thin, its surface creased and yellowed, the ink still rich in places. In Emily's flowing hand, the words read simply, "For when you need to believe." John's hand trembled as he smoothed the note on his palm. The loops of Emily's script were as familiar as her gentle smile. He held the letter up to the waning moonlight, tracing each curve, the swooping F of for, the looping B of believe. His throat constricted with tenderness and longing. Behind him, Anna appeared, her dark braids just visible in the pre-dawn gloom, followed moments later by Samuel, clutching his favorite notebook. They approached silently, drawn by the promise in John's eyes. Anna slipped her hand into his, and Samuel laid a gentle palm on his grandfather's arm. John read aloud, voice low and reverent. "Whenever doubt clouds your heart, remember that love lights the way. You are never alone." Anna smiled through misty eyes and wrapped an arm around John's waist. "Legacy is our mission, Grandpa," she said softly. "We carry her forward." Samuel nodded, his green-flecked gaze bright with purpose. Together, the three stepped toward the line of newly planted rose bushes lining the manor's front veranda. Each blossom, tender and pink against the dark soil, begged for care. John lifted an ornate brass watering can, another of Emily's treasures, and poured life-giving streams over the roots. Anna and Samuel followed suit, murmuring words of gratitude for Emily's vision. Their droplets fell like whispered prayers, each one a promise to nurture both garden and memory. John looked at the manor's walls, bathed now in the soft violet of dawn. The tall, mullioned windows caught the sky's rosy reflection, turning each pane to flame. "Today," he whispered, "we rebuild not just stone and mortar, but what lives inside us." His voice carried in the morning hush, mingling with the distant chirp of sparrows awakening. Meanwhile, Samuel approached the entrance's twin bronze plaques. One bore Emily's name and the date the center had opened, the other honored the volunteers whose tireless work had saved the manor. With a soft cloth in hand, he polished each letter, the metal's warmth spreading under his fingertips. The raised letters gleamed anew, symbols of shared dedication catching the dawn. Inside the hall, Anna found a shadow box beside the front doors, a place of honor reserved for Emily's final messages. She unfolded the yellowed note and placed it carefully under the glass atop a bed of blue velvet. The inscription, "For when you need to believe," shone softly under the chandelier's early glow. By mid-morning, visitors from neighboring towns had begun to arrive, their cars winding up the long drive in steady procession. They came to witness the Whitaker Center for Living Legacies and to pay homage to the woman whose dream had become a beacon for so many. Clara welcomed each guest at the grand hearth, offering fragrant mugs of freshly brewed coffee and slices of warm, dense house-baked bread. She accompanied each pour with a story, how Emily had once held an impromptu tea for traveling gypsy children, how she had taught algebra to a shy orphan by the light of that very fireplace. Anna watched from behind the registration desk, her heart warmed by the sense of intergenerational hope. She jotted down addresses in her notebook, later to send personal thank you notes. "Each smile here carries love," she reflected, her gaze drifting to the wide windows framing the rose garden beyond. A young reporter from the regional newspaper approached John, notebook in hand and eyes alight with curiosity. "Mr. Whitaker," she began, "what do you believe is the true legacy of this center?" John paused, gathering his thoughts as a light breeze stirred the curtains behind them. "Value isn't measured in fortune," he replied, voice steady, "but in lives touched, each story, each person connected." The reporter nodded, scribbling furiously as Clara poured her a steaming cup of coffee. Outside, the restored wrought iron railing lining the veranda was warmed by the sun. John ran his hand along its smooth, curved top, where chips of peeling paint had given way to fresh powder coat. Below, the new bronze handrail shone, the metal warm to the touch. He smiled, thinking of Emily's insistence that beauty and function should always intertwine. A tolling bell chimed high in the manor's tower, each deep note resonating through the corridors and courtyards. The sound was slow, deliberate, an invitation to pause and reflect. Anna and Samuel led the gathered visitors in a moment of stillness, heads bowed and hearts aligned, honoring Emily's memory. Then Samuel stepped to the restored Steinway in the sunroom and began to play. The opening chords of Emily's lullaby soared through the hall, weaving among the guests like a silken thread. Each note carried the weight of love and longing, yet lifted spirits skyward. Guests closed their eyes, some swaying gently to the melody. The children in the back courthouse peered around the piano, enthralled. When the final chord faded, Anna stepped forward and read the closing lines from Emily's last letter. "Be lighthouses to one another, shine so bright that even the darkest night cannot dim our shared humanity." Her voice rang clear, and a hush of reverence fell. Then guests broke into warm applause, some wiping tears from their cheeks, others smiling through the mist in their eyes. John led Anna and Samuel to the shadow box once more, carrying a wreath of fresh white lilies and pink roses. With solemn care, they placed the crown at the foot of Emily's portrait, her kind eyes seeming to glow as if proud of a life she had inspired. The trio stood hand in hand, their silhouettes framed by morning light streaming through the stained glass. As the ceremony wound down, twilight approached, casting long shadows through the grand hall. John, Anna, and Samuel found themselves on the front veranda again, 3 generations bound by shared purpose. They sank onto a smooth wooden bench, its carved rose motif still faintly warm from a day's sun. Curtains of soft linen billowed around them in the gentle breeze. They sat in companionable silence, hands entwined. Anna leaned her head on John's shoulder, and Samuel rested a hand on Anna's knee. Above them, the last rays of the sun painted the garden in shades of lavender and gold. In the distance, a nightingale began to sing, its melody of final benediction on this day of renewal. John closed his eyes and inhaled the mingled scents of rose and dusk. "Emily," he whispered into the hush, "your dream lives on." Anna and Samuel nodded, their smiles soft but radiant. As the breeze rustled the curtains and carried the night's promise across the lawn, the Whitaker family, rooted in love, memory, and unwavering hope, sealed their vow to keep Emily's legacy alive, one new dawn at a time.